Chapter 1266. I didn't expect that this brat actually knows such a profound simulation practice method. This way, the chances of his pill refinement failing will be much lower. When Jiqing saw Ling Zhao's actions, he could not help being somewhat surprised as he said, "Looks like this brat indeed has some ability. Humph, it's only increasing the chances of success. If he doesn't know the crux of this first round's test, even if the pill refinement succeeds in the end, it can only fail." Sun Beard snorted coldly and said, "Not to the extent. Ling Zhao's ability. This old man still believes in it." Ancestor Changle said coolly, "According to rumors, his pill refinement has always succeeded on the first try and has never failed before." "It's just a rumor, not to be believed." Medicine King Sun Beard's prejudice against Ling Zhao was too deep. Hence, he was not willing to believe that Ling Zhao would have such great capabilities at all. But regardless of whether he believed or not, the current Ling Zhao was already immersed in the world of sensory testing. The place that others could not see was precisely an imagined pill refinement platform. But this was still not enough. This kind of imagined thing was ultimately illusory and not realistic enough. Visualization. Ling Zhao suddenly thought of the Essence Spirit Remnant Scrolls. Talk about visualization. He had once visualized the Neza in the Divine Investiture Catalog. Visualizing living things was very difficult. Visualizing dead things was a little easier instead. In that instant, his soul force gushed out like a tide, fusing with the elements in the air. A bizarre soul force and elements condensed into a visualization pill refinement platform gradually appeared. This scene once again drove the audience's excited mood. Quickly look at what that is. Ling Zhao actually created a pill refinement platform out of thin air. My God, this guy is too incredible. I simply love him to death. Screams and cheers boiled over once more. But Ancestor Changle and the rest did not stop them. If one could not withstand this kind of influence, and gave up midway or failed the pill refinement, it could only mean that this alchemist was incapable. After all, many times the environment of alchemists refining pills was very harsh. Alchemists who were unable to withstand the harsh environment did not have the qualifications to become the champion of this alchemy summit. As a result, another few dozen people failed. They vented their anger on the audience and then blamed Ling Zhao, thinking that all this was caused by Ling Zhao. What exactly is that? This time, even Jiqing was confused too. Medicine King Sun shook his head and said, "It's a fusion of soul force and elements. But as for how it was formed, this old man is not clear. I only know that there are records in ancient books that this is a visualization method. There were ancient people who used visualization methods to refine pills." At this time, the Medicine King Sun forgot the grudge between himself and Ling Zhao for a moment. He looked at Ling Zhao with a very shocked gaze. How could such a young guy know the visualization method in the ancient book? No, I must find out from this guy how he got this method and how to use it. From the beginning, he wanted Ling Zhao to die, to now, he wanted to capture Ling Zhao alive. This senior Medicine King had really never thought of using a proper method to ask Ling Zhao for advice. It was not an exaggeration to describe him as narrow-minded. Visualization method. Right, I remember now. There is indeed such a thing in the ancient book, but wasn't it lost? Jiqing stood up in shock. Who is this kid's master? He probably learned it from Her Highness the Moon Maiden. Ancestor Changle thought for a moment and said, Her Highness the Moon Maiden? Well, that's possible. Jiqing sat down again and calmed down a little. However, the shock that Ling Zhao brought to him was still echoing in his heart. He paid so much attention to Ling Zhao in the beginning only because of Yunya's words. But now he felt that this kid was different from the rest. Ling Zhao did not know how much of an impact his actions had on the people outside. He was just doing his own thing, wholeheartedly. Because he had never done such a thing before, he was very careful and did not forget to pay attention to the time. After all, 7 or 8 minutes had already passed. If he found a perfect method to refine pills in the end but missed the time, then it would be meaningless. An assessment was an assessment. There would be no more chances if he was eliminated. The extraction of the ingredients was relatively simple, but using completely unrelated medicinal herbs to fuse with the elements in the air to create new ingredients. This process was really too difficult. The extraordinary pill was a relatively simple pill, and the required ingredients were not that complicated. But even so, Ling Xiao tried dozens of times before he finally succeeded. Fortunately, this was a simulation. If it was real, he would have been eliminated long ago. At the same time, Dan Qing and Ji Liu had already finished refining the medicinal herbs and put them into the cauldron to start refining. The two of them had some free time and casually glanced at Ling Xiao. Because of their surprise, they almost messed up the heat and caused the refining to fail. However, they were experts after all and quickly remedied the situation. This was enough to show their outstanding ability. I succeeded. Right then, an alchemist stood up and shouted excitedly, "I succeeded too." "Me too." A total of over 20 alchemists completed the extraordinary pill virtually at the same time. However, what welcomed them was the mechanical bird's merciless shriek. They were eliminated. This kind of situation was what Ling Xiao had analyzed before. Recklessly refining the extraordinary pill according to the pill formula, but neglecting the use of the supplementary medicinal ingredients. The extraordinary pill refined in the end, although effective, would definitely not meet the requirements of passing the test. Why? There's a problem with your question. One of the alchemists was unwilling to be eliminated like the others. He roared very discontentedly. However, what this roar brought was being forcefully dragged out by the security martial artists. At this very moment, many alchemists who were just preparing to refine pills according to the pill formula all revealed thankful expressions. Fortunately, they were careful enough and did not end up like these people. But the problem was, what should they do next? Not following the pill formula, what should they do? Time continued to pass. In the next 3 to 5 minutes, another 100 people were mercilessly eliminated. This time, nobody dared to act recklessly here. The alchemists who failed left the testing area in low spirits. Some people left the city of sin with disappointment and anger. Some people stayed with the attitude of learning and continued to watch the competition as spectators, because they wanted to know how to solve this question. Of course, until now, only a small number of alchemists have been eliminated. There were less than 300 alchemists. To the large number of alchemists, this was really insignificant. More than half of the alchemists who stayed behind and persisted. Sometimes you have to admit that the immortal island of Chang Li's influence was very strong. The alchemists who came this time were much better than before. Chapter 1267. When 15 minutes had passed on the magic treasure clock, half of the time had passed. Many alchemists could not wait any longer. They lit up their furnaces and began to refine the extraordinary pill according to their own methods. As for Ling Xiao, he was still in the visualization state and had not exited. Although he had been delayed for such a long time, it had to be said that his efforts were still very effective. He had actually refined more than half of the supplementary medicinal ingredients needed through simulation. There was one thing he was absolutely confident about, and that was that he could definitely complete what he could do in the visualization state in reality. To him, there was no possibility of accidental failure. It was just that the next few ingredients would be more complicated and difficult to refine. However, there was only 15 minutes left. He had to speed up and be more careful. You only know how to deliberately mystify things. Dan Qing's pill was already in the process of being refined. He only needed a little more time to complete the refinement, and he would be able to successfully pass the test. Therefore, when he saw that Ling Xiao had not lit up his furnace after 15 minutes, he was a little gloating. Ji Liu also shook her head lightly. Although she did not know what Ling Xiao was doing, She was very clear that if Ling Xiao did not officially start refining the pill, there would not be enough time. According to the standard of a yellow-grade alchemist, refining an extraordinary pill would take at least 10 minutes. And Ling Xiao was only a yellow-grade alchemist. Even if she overestimated him, there was not enough time. However, at this time there was nothing she could do. After all, she did not know what Ling Xiao was doing. This visualization simulation process is fine if it's used during normal times, but it's a bit of a waste of time during the test. Ji Qing was also a little worried. Yes, after time passes, even if I'm biased towards him, I can't play favoritism. Ancestor Changel also said helplessly. However, Ling Xiao, who was being watched, did not care about the outside world's influence at all. No matter how many people were eliminated, no matter how many people were staring at him, he only had one thing to do now, and that was to complete the task at hand. Another 5 minutes passed. Time entered the last 10 minutes. Ling Xiao finally opened his eyes, and a smile appeared on his face. He slowly landed and did not forget to look at the results of the two geniuses nearby. From the fragrance, he could tell that Dan Qing and Ji Luoyu's extraordinary pills were about to be refined. Moreover, the medicinal effect might reach 70% to 80%, which was already very good. The arrogance of these two obviously had a certain reason. At least among the tens of thousands of people, they were currently ranked at the top. After a deep breath, Ling's time. 10 minutes? That's faster than I thought. He smiled slightly and did not immediately go to refine the pill. Instead, he sat down on the white bone throne and closed his eyes to rest for 3 minutes, maintaining his state of mind in an absolutely optimal state. Although it's said that sharpening a knife won't delay the work of cutting wood, this kid is too calm. 7 minutes. Even if he has the method to refine the pill, can he succeed? Ji Qing frowned. At this time, even he could not understand Ling Xiao's thoughts. Medicine King's son, Zai, also frowned, because he similarly did not understand what Ling Xiao was going to do. It was precisely because he did not understand that he was even more nervous. Ling Xiao, this guy, was often able to surprise people. Right at this time, Ling Xiao suddenly raised his hand. The several main medicinal herbs listed in the pill formula were all thrown into the pill furnace by him. At the same time, a ball of flame emerged from his palm. This flame was just mortal fire. There was no need to use sacred fire for the time being. What is he doing? Isn't it the same thing as those guys who were eliminated? Because the audience could not see Ling Xiao's actions in detail, they could not understand Ling Xiao's approach. Even Medicine King's son, Zai, did not understand. He's simply giving up on himself, working for half a day, and also can't find a reliable method. Ji Qing wanted to refute, but he could not find a reason to refute. What Ling Xiao was doing now was indeed a bit like giving up on himself. Originally, they thought that this was crazy enough, but what Ling Xiao did next was even crazier than they imagined. After the furnace, fire burned for a while. Ling Xiao suddenly opened the furnace lid and poured all the remaining medicinal herbs in. Crazy! Messing around like this will blow up the pot. In the audience seats, an alchemist who had already been eliminated exclaimed, "Really crazy." He might have already understood that those medicinal herbs are things that can replace supplementary medicinal herbs. But it absolutely can't be thrown in directly. It needs to be tempered before it can be replaced. Otherwise, it will definitely blow up. Medicine King's son, Zai, also revealed a hint of a cold smile. He suddenly felt that he was a bit too worried. This Ling Xiao was not as smart as imagined at all. On the contrary, this guy was a boorish fellow, a fool. Perhaps he has other ideas. Ancestor Changel was also uncertain in his heart, but he still hoped to find a reason for Ling Xiao to absolve himself. Chirp, chirp. At this moment, a mechanical bird came with a clear and melodious cry. This meant that someone had successfully completed the refinement of the Transcendence pill and passed the assessment. It's Dan Qing. Dan Qing opened the furnace lid. A round and smooth medicinal pill appeared in front of everyone. The medicinal fragrance wafted. On Dan Qing's face, one could see that he was very proud. Almost at the same time, Jiluoyu's medicinal pill was also successfully refined. From the appearance, the two people's medicinal pill standards were almost the same. However, the score still depended on the mechanical bird's evaluation in the end. The first round of assessment did not require several judges to personally score. These two people were the first to finish. After them, 5 minutes had passed. When there were only 2 minutes left before the end of the first round, the mechanical bird's cries were almost one after another. There were screams, which meant that they were eliminated. There were also clear and melodious cries, which meant that they had successfully passed. The 10 people on the rostrum, except for Ling Xiao, had completely passed. Hee, Dan Changle, it seems that you are thinking too much. Ling Xiao is not as special as you think. Looking at the time and looking at Ling Xiao, Medicine King's son, as I said very proudly, but at least he didn't explode. Ancestor Changle could only find such a reason to refute. Yes, he didn't explode. However, if the time is up and he still hasn't finished refining the medicinal pill, he'll still be eliminated. Medicine King's son, Zai, chuckled. He couldn't wait for the huge magical treasure clock to reach the 30-minute mark in an instant. He originally wanted to use some method to make a fool of Ling Xiao without leaving any traces. However, it seemed that it was unnecessary to think about it now. Ling Xiao's performance was much worse than he had imagined. Chapter 1268. Everyone was very nervous. Some were hoping that Ling Xiao would be unlucky. Others were hoping that Ling Xiao would succeed. Who asked Ling Xiao to be so flashy when he entered, and so different when he refined pills? Dang! Dang! The clock finally rang. At this time, everyone was attracted by the sound and did not notice that Ling Xiao was already resting on the white bone throne. He calculated the time accurately. Although it was tight, he still completed it before the clock rang. And it was perfect. For a perfectionist, this was too important. He actually completed it. He's finally done. I almost thought that his dazzling pill refining process would end in failure. In the crowd, there were already many die-hard fans of Ling Xiao. As the clock rang, the pharmacists who did not complete the refinement were depressed. Although some were still rushing to refine, the mechanical bird had already given the result. A series of ear-piercing screams rang out. Out of the 10,000 people, about 6,000 were eliminated in an instant. In the end, there were less than 4,000 people left. The exact number would probably be judged by the mechanical bird later. After all, although some people had successfully refined the transcendent pill, they did not follow the pill formula blindly. This way, the mechanical bird would not be able to eliminate them immediately. But in the end, through the appraisal of the pill, they could determine the person who had passed. Kid, your luck is not bad. You actually managed to finish refining the pill in time. However, if the method is wrong, you still can't pass. You are the candidate recommended by the Changle ancestor. If you can't even pass the first round, you will really become a big joke. Just as Ling Xiao was waiting for the mechanical bird to make the final judgment, Dan Qing's impatient voice rang out again. Ignorant, Ling Xiao only lightly curled his lips and said, "You only know how to follow others and do not have your own creativity. You are not qualified to criticize me. You dare to say that I am ignorant? This is the alternative method that the King of Medicine found. It is currently the most efficient method. You are not scolding me. You are insulting the King of Medicine." Dan Qing said angrily, "Whatever you say. When the results are announced later, you will know how naive you are. In the end, you are just a frog at the bottom of a well." Frog at the bottom of a well. Every time Dan Qing bickered with Ling Xiao, he would be angered to the point of choking. This time was no exception. However, he took a deep breath and finally held it in. He wanted to see what qualifications Ling Xiao had to quarrel with him after the results were announced. On the judging panel, the Everlasting Joy Patriarch stood up and looked down at the approximately 4,000 people who were still standing on the stage. He said in a clear voice, "Now, place the extraordinary pills that you have refined into the mechanical bird's mouth. The mechanical bird will grade each of your pills." Hearing this, the pharmacists all looked at the mechanical bird that looked like a crow. Someone put the pill into the mechanical bird's mouth out of curiosity. He jumped up in excitement. Although he had just passed, he still passed. After that, many people followed this method and placed their elixirs inside. Then, as the mechanical bird continued to speak human language, more and more names appeared on the jade disc. Some of the people at the very beginning had basically passed. But soon, there were pharmacists who scored below 60. There were even some who scored Ling. Although the pharmacists who failed were furious, they did not dare to say anything. After all, they were the clearest about the pills they refined. Many people simply threw all their pills into the cauldron. In the end, the pills they refined were simply trash. They were even worse than those who were eliminated in the test. Of course, there were still many who passed. After all, if the goal of this test was only to pass, then it wouldn't be difficult for a high-grade pharmacist. Ling Xiao leaned on the white bone throne and closed his eyes to rest. It was not that he did not want to take the test quickly. The main reason was that he was too tired. Creation should not be done by mortals. However, Ling Xiao did it. This consumed a lot of his physical strength and soul force. When he was bickering with Dan Qing, he was actually dizzy. If it wasn't for Dan Qing being so annoying, Ling Xiao would not have bothered to speak. "Sister Luoyu, let's try it too?" Dan Qing looked at Ji Luoyu and said, "All right." Ji Luoyu wanted to see how many points Ling Xiao's pills could get. But seeing that Ling Xiao did not have the slightest intention of testing, she could only go with Dan Qing. The two of them stuffed the pills in their hands into the mechanical bird's mouth. The mechanical bird swallowed the pills as if it was eating. Then its body began to flicker with a mysterious luster. Many pharmacists stopped what they were doing. The people in the audience also looked at the huge jade. They wanted to see what kind of points these two geniuses of the pharmacist world could get. After all, these two were people who had received personal guidance from the Medicine King Sunbu. Look! Dan Qing got 80 points. Little Medicine King Jiu also got 80 points. Heavens, these should be the two people with the highest points so far, right? That's right, it is indeed like this. They are really a golden couple. These two are too powerful. Medicine King Sun Sa looked at the points and rankings on the jade and nodded with a smile. In his opinion, 80 points should be the highest score. Even if Ling Xiao passed, it was absolutely impossible for him to exceed this score. What a pity! I used a bit more time than Big Brother Dan Qing. I admit defeat. Ji Luoyu was free and easy. Although her points were the same as Dan Qing, she used more time to refine the pills. In fact, if the grading was stricter, she would not be as good as Dan Qing. Little sister Luoyu is too modest. We can only be considered a tie. Unlike some people who are still pretending to be dead and refuse to show their results. Dan Qing looked at Ling Xiao with disdain and revealed a thick sense of sarcasm. Maybe he's really tired. Ji Luoyu's impression of Ling Xiao was getting better and better. Therefore, she did not agree with Dan Qing's point of view. Little sister Luoyu, don't be deceived by some people's honest appearance. Later, when his results are announced, we will know the result. But I believe that no one will have a higher score than us today. Dan Qing was very confident. Ji Luoyu looked at Ling Xiao and did not say anything. Ling Xiao's super ability time and time again made her not dare to speak carelessly. Chapter 1269. Among the results that appeared, the highest was 79. There was really no one who could surpass Dan Qing and Ji Luoyu. In the end, among all the alchemists participating in the alchemy conference, only 2 people remained who had not taken the test. One was Ling Xiao. The other was a girl with an extremely ugly appearance. That face of hers was practically completely distorted. Very few people were willing to take a second look at her. In the past, I heard that your continent's alchemists are the orthodox ones. Their standards are definitely not bad. But looking at it today, it's simply beneath the great reputation. In fact, it's hard to live up to. When everyone's gazes were cast towards Ling Xiao, that girl opened her mouth. Her words were practically a challenge to all the alchemists present. As everyone knew, apart from the sea race, the other races all lived on the continent. Her words were equivalent to scolding everyone present, including Medicine King Sun Sa. "Stinking girl, what did you say?" Dan Qing was the first to be displeased. Ling Xiao dared to rebuke him. He also accepted it. After all, this fellow Ling Xiao had many people behind him. But on what basis did a girl with such an ugly appearance dare to rebuke him? "I said that you're all trash." The girl gave Dan Qing a disdainful glance, then placed her medicinal pill into the mechanical bird's mouth. "I'll let you all know that the mystic world's best alchemists don't belong to the continent races, but to our sea race." Shameless boasting. Dan Qing pursed his lips, seemingly very disdainful. This sea race girl in front of him looked to be about the same age as Jili. At this age, without the guidance of a master, how could she possibly beat them? That sea race girl isn't simple. Ji Qing's expression suddenly became solemn. Dan Qing could not see that sea race girl's ability, but Ji Qing was not only an alchemy master, he was also an absolute yin-yang realm powerhouse. It was impossible for him not to see through it. Yeah, if this old man didn't see wrongly, the flame she used to refine pills earlier should be the deep-sea devil flame that was bred from the extreme yin cold flame. Although it can't compare to a divine fire, it can absolutely be called an immortal fire. Mortal fire, mystical fire, immortal fire, divine fire, sacred fire. These were the 4 grades of flames. To a martial artist, if it wasn't a fire-type martial soul, it wouldn't be too important. However, to an alchemist, this was something he had to know. Dan Qing and Luo, you were only using strange flames. Most of the others were only using ordinary flames to refine pills. As for her immortal fire, it was clearly superior. Furthermore, this little girl's soul force was extremely powerful. For an alchemist, a powerful soul force could ensure that they could communicate with the pill and control it better. If this old man didn't see wrongly, this little girl's soul power is definitely second to none among her peers. He's even stronger than I was back then. Medicine King Sun Bu said in a deep voice, "She is more powerful than Dan Qing and Ji Luoyu, and more powerful than Ling Xiao." "I agree." Ji Qing also nodded and said, "It can't be. According to what the 2 of you said, she can really break the limit of 80 points. Although Patriarch Changel knew alchemy, he was not an expert." "Ancestor, the 2 of them are right. This woman is indeed powerful. Moreover, from the insignia she's wearing, she's most likely from the Water God Temple." The 4th judge was the number 1 alchemist from Changel, Celestial Island. Because his status was inferior to Sunbu and Ji Qing, he usually didn't speak much. Now that Patriarch Changel had asked, he decided to give him an answer. Just as they were talking, the originally chaotic assessment site suddenly quieted down. Countless people stared at the ranking on the jade wall, dumbfoundedly. Heavenly Sea Pearl, 100 points. 100 points was also a perfect score. It meant that the pill refined by this Heavenly Sea Pearl had reached 100% efficacy. At this time, even Medicine King Sun Bu frowned, because he once said that 80 points was the limit of this assessment. But today there was someone with a perfect score. At this time, Ling Xiao also slowly opened his eyes. The sudden silence made him a little uncomfortable. He wanted to see what was going on. Seeing the score on the jade wall, he was slightly stunned for a moment, but then he smiled. He already knew that Dan Qing and Jiluoyu were not his match, so he always felt that this alchemy conference was just a formality. There was no meaning. But at this moment he suddenly became excited. His true opponent had appeared. He didn't care who this girl was or what her identity was. As long as she could be his opponent, that was enough. Through the Tai Chi eye, he could see the true face of this girl. That ugly appearance was just a disguise. In fact, this girl's appearance was not worse than Ji Luoyu, Feng Ming, Piao Shui, and the others. Perhaps she noticed that Ling Xiao was looking at her. The Heavenly Sea Pearl also looked at Ling Xiao. Her eyes were filled with intense coldness and hatred. This made Ling Xiao a little surprised. This person should have never met him before. Why did she hate him so much? However, after thinking about it for a while, Ling Xiao roughly understood. He was the Celestial Emperor. He was the one who single-handedly destroyed the rising new true demon empire. As a member of the sea race, this Heavenly Sea Pearl should have a reason to hate him. In fact, his thinking was not comprehensive enough. The reason why the Heavenly Sea Pearl hated him was not only because of his identity as a member of the sea race, but also because of the Water God Temple. Ling Xiao destroyed the one-eyed pirates in the City of Sin and subdued the Twin Flowers pirates. This was equivalent to destroying the forces that belonged to the Water God Temple. Although the Water God Temple did not plan on starting an all-out war, it was inevitable that they would hate Ling Xiao. At this moment, the swallow representative below the stage was very excited. Although this sea race girl's cultivation was not as high as his, as a pharmacist, she was the most outstanding of the Water God Temple's younger generation. As long as she made a move, it would be impossible for Ling Xiao to become the champion of the Alchemy Conference. Even though he was unable to destroy Ling Xiao for the time being, it was definitely not a problem to give Ling Xiao some trouble. We actually lost to a member of the sea race. Dan Qing and Ji Luoyu looked at each other. They both felt anger and unwillingness. Although the races on the continent weren't united enough, when facing the sea race, they were often united against a common enemy. Even if Ling Xiao became the champion of today's Alchemy Conference, they were not willing to let a member of the sea race steal it. That would be too shameful. This is really a dark horse. Changel Ancestor bitterly laughed. He did not know much about pharmacists, but the Heavenly Sea Pearl got full marks in the first round. In terms of creativity, she was not inferior to Sun Sa. Who could be her opponent? Could Ling Xiao do it? It would be very difficult. I've said it before. You land races are all trash. You should bow down to the sea race. The Heavenly Sea Pearl stood there proudly. The wind blew through her long hair. Her ugly face had a domineering and arrogant air. Dan Qing was not convinced. Ji Luoyu was also not convinced. But neither of them said anything, because they had clearly lost to the Heavenly Sea Pearl in the first round, and they had lost miserably. Chapter 1270. Dan Changel, can the Sea Clan participate in the Alchemy Conference? Medicine King Sun Bu asked. Of course they can. This Alchemy Conference didn't stipulate any race, so there's no problem with the Sea Clan. Ancestor, Changel replied. This is bad. If we let the Sea Clan take the champion of the Alchemy Conference, I'm afraid we'll lose all our face. Moreover, she's from the Water Spirit Temple. Don't forget that your Changel Celestial Island was once driven back from the White Tiger continent by the Water Spirit Temple. Medicine King's son, Bu sneered. I know that, but what can I do? We can only hope that Dan Qing and Ji Luoyu can perform well in the next few rounds. Otherwise, do you think this old man will kill her in front of so many people? How could Ancestor Changel not know that Medicine King Sun Bu's words were true? But the problem was, what could he do? Have you forgotten someone? In the VIP seats, the Moon Maiden, who had been silent all this time, said faintly, Who? Could it be that you're talking about Ling Xiao? Ji Qing was stunned for a moment. Only then did he remember that Ling Xiao had not tested the pill in his hand yet. But can he really do it? Tianhai Pearl has already gotten full marks in the first round. If Ling Xiao can get 10 marks, he'll be thanking the heavens. Full marks? I don't think so. Even Ji Qing, who believed in Ling Xiao, didn't have much confidence at this moment. After all, Tian Hai Pearl's ability was too strong. You're really long-winded. Won't you know when you see the results? Moon Maiden said coldly, then looked at Ling Xiao and said, Ling Xiao, show them that my man is definitely the best. I don't dare to say that I'm the best, but it should be easy to deal with a small fish and shrimp from the Sea Clan. Ling Xiao smiled faintly, then stretched his back and walked towards the mechanical bird with his extraordinary pill in hand. Humph, you're just putting on airs. Do you think you can achieve my results? Pearl of the Amami Sea asked arrogantly. TSK, little girl, can you stop talking? Your mouth is filled with the smell of fish. It's fine that you're here to participate in the alchemy conference. But why must you make an enemy out of the entire continent? Ling Xiao sighed helplessly and said, Now I have no choice but to be your enemy. He had already stuffed the pill into the mechanical bird's mouth. The next moment, the mechanical bird fell into silence. Ha ha ha, are these the results you wanted me to see? Tian Hai Jinju laughed with a mocking look on her face. Dan Qing and Ji Luiyu also lowered their heads in embarrassment. They felt that if Ling Xiao was embarrassed, they would be embarrassed as well. Ignorant, Ling Xiao directly returned to the white bone throne and said disdainfully, just as Pearl of the Amami Sea was about to retort, the mechanical bird suddenly shone and started to sing a beautiful song. At the same time, the person ranked first on the jade disc changed. Ling Xiao, 120 points. What was going on? 120 points? Higher than full marks? How did it come about? For a moment, not only was Pearl of the Amami Sea dumbfounded, even the audience supporting Ling Xiao was dumbfounded. Perfect transcendent pill. Ji Qing was the first to stand up and said loudly, Perfect? How can it be perfect? Medicine King's son, Zai, muttered to himself with an expression of disbelief. You cheated. Pearl of the Amami Sea was shocked for a moment and shouted loudly, Cheated? Are you an idiot? If I cheated, wouldn't the mechanical bird eliminate me? If you can't do it, don't accuse others. Ling Xiao said disdainfully, Don't tell me you think that the competition wants me to win and purposely let me get such a high score. Is it impossible? Pearl of the Amami Sea said angrily. She couldn't accept it. In terms of medical skills, she wasn't even afraid of Medicine King Sun's eye. How could she lose to a mere Ling Xiao? If you have evidence, take it out. If you don't, it's slander. Slandering the competition organizers and judges is a big matter. If you don't handle it well, you might be disqualified. Of course, Ling Xiao didn't cheat, so he believed that Pearl of the Amami Sea couldn't find any evidence. Okay, even if I lost to you in this round, I won't lose to you in the next round. Pearl of the Amami Sea was silent for a long time and finally chose to retreat. Because she had no choice. She didn't have evidence to prove that others cheated. Everything was just nonsense. So she could only pin her hopes on the next round. She didn't believe that Ling Xiao could be so powerful every time. Seeing Pearl of the Amami Sea silent, Ling Xiao looked at Dan Qing and smiled. Sorry, I accidentally became a hero again. In the next round, you have to work hard. Don't let this Sea Clan woman take advantage of you. Ling Xiao was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Dan Qing mocked him before. So how could he not take the opportunity to mock him? Humph, I don't need you to remind me. I'll definitely do it. Don't think that just because you were excellent in the first round, you'll be excellent in the next round. Dan Qing was actually very shocked. He didn't know how to describe Ling Xiao anymore. This was such a terrifying fellow. He seemed to have endless potential, but on the surface, he still refused to admit defeat. I've said it before. There's no need to worry. At least in the first 3 continents and seas, no one's medical skills are better than my man. The Moon Lady smiled proudly. Even though she had experienced many vicissitudes of life, the Moon Lady still had her willful side sometimes. She wouldn't allow anyone to question her man. Ha ha ha, Her Highness Moon Maiden is right. Ling Xiao has truly broadened our horizons. He's actually able to use those ingredients to refine a perfect, transcendent pill. In that case, I'm sure he'll be even more outstanding in the following tests. Ji Qing laughed loudly, but he was a little vigilant in his heart. He had thought of nurturing Ling Xiao first, and then controlling him. But was Ling Xiao really the kind of person who could be controlled? It was difficult. Medicine King Sun didn't say anything. His eyes flickered with a complicated look, but his gaze was fixed on Ling Xiao. The everlasting joy, old ancestor, was probably the happiest one. He had never thought of controlling Ling Xiao. From the beginning, he already knew how powerful Ling Xiao was. What he wanted to do was to become allies with Ling Xiao. At this moment, this thought became more and more firm. Taking a deep breath, the everlasting joy old ancestor stood up and said in a clear voice, "In the first round, there are still 3,200 pharmacists left. Next, we will begin the second round of the test. Before that, the pharmacists can rest for a while and recover their spirit." Rest was necessary. After all, refining pills consumed a lot of soul force. During this period, Ling Xiao hid beside the Moon Lady, because in other places he would be surrounded by those colorful girls chattering nonstop. He, Ling Xiao, wasn't such a casual person. The woman he loved was here. How could he do such a thing? Chapter 1271. After a quarter of an hour, the second round of the competition officially began. The items on the alchemy platform had already been changed. The prescription was new, and the handwriting was clear. Now, the herbs placed on the bluestone board were exactly the same as the prescription. There were no defects, and the quality was also very good. It's just that there was only one set of materials, but now there are two sets. From this point of view, the difficulty of this round should be more difficult than the first round. However, after hearing Medicine King Sun Sa's request, the pharmacists were a little confused. This round is still refining the extraordinary pill. There are two chances, and the medicinal effect also needs to reach 60% and above. You can start now. These words don't sound like there's a problem, but it made the pharmacists participating in the competition a little afraid to move. The reason is very simple. This exam question is too simple. An extraordinary pill that doesn't require the medicinal effect to reach 100%. There are also two sets of sufficient materials and a complete and clear prescription. If they can't even refine this successfully, then they really don't deserve to be a Huang-level pharmacist. Ling Xiao's heart is also a little confused. He still doesn't rush to start because he knows very well that this exam question is definitely not so simple. It's the same 30 minutes of competition time. He has enough time to figure it out. Many people around have the same reaction as Ling Xiao. To be able to pass the first round, they basically have some ability. They definitely won't act rashly. After about 5 minutes, someone started to refine the pill. Dan Qing and Ji Luoyu have already refined the first set of herbs and put it into the pill furnace. Obviously, wasting time to speculate is completely useless. So they decided to use the first set of materials to try. This way, at least they can know where the problem is. For a time, on almost all the alchemy platforms, the flames have already started to burn. Maybe everyone is aware that the problem is not simple, but they can't find the reason. They can only find the problem through actual operation. Fortunately, this time there are two sets of materials that can be used to squander. However, Ling Xiao still hasn't moved. He thinks differently from others. He feels that the two sets of materials here may not be giving you two chances. Maybe there's another meaning in this. In the entire competition, only the Tianhai Pearl has the same approach as Ling Xiao. She didn't start. It seems like only the two of them thought of something that no one else thought of. Ji Qing smiled and said, "This time, I'm afraid only Ling Xiao can snipe the Sky Sea Pearl. Dan Qing and Luoyu are still too inexperienced." In the end, you still played that little trick? Medicine King Sun Bu frowned. That's right. I did play a little trick. If you can see through it, your result will be very good. If you can't see through it, you might not fail, but the probability of failure will be greatly increased. Ji Qing smiled. Sai, why bother? Isn't this too much of a blow to them? Sun Sa said helplessly. Ling Xiao and the Tian Hai Pearl are younger than most of the people here. If the two of them were able to discover the secret, it means that there is still someone who can solve it. Ji Qing said indifferently. Maybe they're just being cautious? Sun Sa said again. In fact, I didn't see the trap you designed. Maybe. Anyway, we'll know the answer soon. Ji Qing smiled and looked down at the arena. The expressions of Ling Xiao and the Sky Sea Pearl revealed a hint of understanding. It seems that they should be about to discover something. At the same time, the rest of the pharmacists had already begun to refine pills. Some people's speed was particularly fast. Because the process was very smooth at the beginning, these people shook their heads and smiled bitterly. They clearly felt that they were a little scared. In fact, this level was so simple. Dan Qing even glanced at Ling Xiao and said to Ji Luoyu, "Did you see that? That person thinks too highly of himself." The second round is a relatively simple question to begin with, yet he took so long to think about it. Hilarious. Ji Luoyu did not agree with his words, but frowned and said, "Maybe he has his own reasons. Let's do our own thing." In the previous first level, Ji Luoyu had already seen Ling Xiao's power, so now she could not underestimate Ling Xiao's ability. Although she really did not know what Ling Xiao was thinking at this time, she always felt that Ling Xiao would not do something without aiming. In the audience, there were many people who did not know much about alchemy, so when they saw the exquisite alchemy skills of the pharmacists, they were all excited. Of course, there were also some people who were anxious for Ling Xiao. Why hasn't he started yet? Hurry up, or someone else will finish it first. It was no wonder that these people were so anxious. The key was that each level had a score. The final score with the highest score was the champion. This was not as simple as clearing the level. Obviously, in the second level, with enough medicinal materials and clear and complete pill formulas, the completion speed and the effect of the pill became the factors of the score. This was not the same as the first level. The Tian Hai Pearl has finally started. On the judging panel, Ji Qing sucked in a deep breath and said, "How can this little girl's pill refinement technique be so seasoned? This completely doesn't seem like an 18 or 19-year-old little girl. Without several decades of accumulation, it's impossible. Sun Su, you know this Tian Hai Pearl. Do you know her specific situation? About 3 years ago, I saw her once. At that time, this Tian Hai Pearl was extremely talented, but at most, she was a genius at the level of Luoyu. Her skills were not so skillful." Sun Su replied, "I suspect that in these 3 years, she should have encountered something. Maybe it was a kind of opportunity, a very good opportunity. If that is the case, Ling Xiao is in trouble. The Tian Hai Pearl is one step ahead." Ji Qing frowned and said, "And she has obviously found out the reason why we provided 2 sets of medicinal materials. Among so many people, only she used the correct method. I don't know if Ling Xiao can suppress her in this level. If he can't, then we will be embarrassed." Ancestor Changle shook his head and sighed. Even if he did not know much about alchemy, hearing Ji Qing's words, he knew what the situation was. At present, only the Tian Hai Pearl was using the correct method to refine pills. The rest were all wrong. Although this kind of wrong method could also pass, the results would definitely not be as good as the Tian Hai Pearl. Didn't this mean that they could only place their hopes on Ling Xiao, who hadn't even started refining pills yet? As time continued to pass, some of the faster alchemists were about to finish refining pills. The whole process did not seem to have any problems. This made their originally nervous mood suddenly relax. Perhaps they were really scaring themselves. In reality, it was not that scary. In this round, the judges were really going easy on them. Chapter 1272. When many people's medicinal pills were already about to come out of the furnace, the corners of Ling Zhao's mouth curled into a hint of a smile. He finally understood the meaning of this round's competition. Hence, very soon he also started his own refinement. His speed was very fast. In terms of technique, it was actually not the slightest bit worse than the heavenly sea pearl. That's not right. On the judges' seats, Ji Qing, who saw Ling Xiao start refining the pill, frowned and said, "What is Ling Xiao doing here?" He was also somewhat confused, because Ling Xiao's refinement method was actually different from the rest, including the heavenly sea pearl. Hoo, this boy tends to exceed expectations. You misjudged this time too, right? He probably has his own ideas. But no matter what, he finally started to make a move. Otherwise, it would be dragged to the end again. But Ancestor Changle had an inexplicable trust in Ling Xiao. Probably because Ling Xiao's performance in the first round previously was seriously a little too good. Makes sense. Ji Qing also smiled. Although Ling Xiao's method was different from the rest, and also different from the correct method that he designed previously, it opened up a new path and seemed to really have some knack for it. Humph! Always liking to walk a novel path. You'll dig your own grave. Not at all dependable. Medicine King's son, Bu said rather discontentedly. Ji Qing was just about to say something when a puff of black smoke suddenly rose in the venue, accompanied by a rather loud sound. Hoo, indeed, someone started to fail, huh? This is the mistake made in a hurry. Ji Qing smiled and could not help shaking his head. He really hoped that these alchemist performances could be like Ling Xiao and the heavenly sea pearl. Too bad, not everyone was so outstanding. Of course, the ones he regretted the most were Dan Qing and Ji Luoyu. Actually, as long as these two people calmed down a little, they should be able to discover where the problem lay. In the end, they only wanted to be competitive and took a wrong step. There was no chance to regret it, even if they wanted to. They could only walk this path to the end. Impossible. Transcendental pill, this grade of medicinal pill, I've refined more than 1,000 times. The recent success rate is 99%, close to 100%. This time, the entire process also did not have any problems. Why did I fail? At this time, the alchemist who failed had a dumbfounded look. He had no idea what was going on. There was no problem with the herbs. There was no problem with the pill recipe. There was no problem with the forging method. What went wrong? Could it be that I didn't control the heat properly? Plus, this furnace isn't very smooth to use. That must be it. This pharmacist could be considered to have used his brain. It was a pity that he had completely blamed the problem on himself. He had never thought about whether there was really no problem with those medicinal herbs. Was there really no problem with the pill formula? Previously, the first test tested innovation. The second test was about innovation. Only by not fearing authority and tradition would one be able to discover the problems within. Unfortunately, out of everyone present, only Ling Xiao and the Tianhai Pearl were able to do so. Although the two of them walked different paths, they both maintained a skeptical attitude from the beginning. They didn't think that the judges would be so kind as to give this stage such a simple one. As for this failed pharmacist, although he was a good person and an honest person, it was precisely because of this that he once again walked onto the path of failure. He began to refine pills again. He used the second set of ingredients and used the exact same method. The final result could be imagined. Idiot! I've already left clues for these people who chose the wrong method to pass the stage. In the end, he didn't even think about it and started to refine pills again. Medicine King's son, Sa, scolded. He knew that many people couldn't see through Ji Qing's tricks, so he lowered the difficulty. Even if the pharmacist chose the wrong method, there was at least a possibility of passing the stage. As long as they properly summarized and observed after failing once, they would discover the answer. Unfortunately, this person didn't do that at all. He anxiously started to refine pills again. Extremely stupid. Failure seemed to be contagious. After the first puff of black smoke rose, more and more puffs of black smoke rose one after another. Accompanying each puff of black smoke was a muffled sound. Like the first pharmacist who failed, these pharmacists also revealed an expression of disbelief and confusion. They lowered their heads and pondered, considering where their problem was. But some people, like the first failure, attributed the mistake to themselves and started to refine pills again. And the other pharmacists finally found the key to open the door to pass the stage. That's more like it. At least not everyone is so stupid. Looks like there are still some people who can stay in this stage. Medicine King's son Saw's expression was slightly better. The test questions that he designed, if no one could discover the mystery within, then it was very hard for him not to be angry. Seeing the appearance of the failures, the audience was somewhat unsettled. They were all discussing animatedly, but they couldn't say anything decent. Most of them were words like idiot, idiot, why did he fail again? Puff. Finally, the 10 people on the rostrum also began to lose. One after another, even Dan Qing and Ji Luoyu couldn't escape from this demon barrier. Dan Qing's expression was very ugly. Just now, he mocked Ling Xiao for thinking himself clever and not daring to refine pills. Now it seemed that Ling Xiao's caution was correct, and he was a little rash and impulsive. I understand now. Ji Luoyu revealed a bitter smile and said, Brother Dan Qing, the two of us are really too anxious. The real correct method of refining pills should be to combine the moon-concealing flower in the 2 medicinal herbs together. I also understand that the moon-concealing flower in the 2 medicinal herbs is incomplete, although it looks intact on the surface, but in fact, it has been tampered with by someone and turned into 2 attributes of yin and yang. If only one of them is used, then it is basically bound to fail. Dan Qing was reminded like this and suddenly came to a realization. The 2 of them looked at the destroyed dregs at the same time. Suddenly, their eyes lit up. There is still a chance to pass. In the dregs, there were still remnants of the moon concealing flowers' attributes. Although it was not so perfect, but if they were willing, they could still extract some. In this way, the transcendental pill that was refined was still effective, but the effect was not very good. This was the glimmer of hope that Medicine King's son, Sa, left for the pharmacists. Thinking of this, the 2 of them hurriedly threw themselves into refining. Since they already understood the problem, this time they would not fail. After all, the 2 of them were not weak. After many people failed the first time, they became cautious the second time. However, there was not much time left. They could not keep thinking calmly. I'm going all out, let's try again. This was the thought of many people. However, when they began to use the second set of medicinal herbs to refine pills, the first pharmacist who failed again. His 2 sets of medicinal herbs were wasted. The mechanical bird let out a scream. He was eliminated. Chapter 1273. After wasting 2 sets of herbs, he was eliminated. However, the eliminated pharmacist was still in a daze. He did not understand why he failed. It was as if he had fallen into a fog. This made those pharmacists who did not have time to use the second set of herbs in shock. They all put down the herbs in their hands. They were really frightened and did not know what to do. Although the outside world was discussing, Ling Xiao did not seem to hear anything. He only focused on refining the pill according to his own method. He did not follow the correct method. Instead, he threw 2 sets of herbs into the furnace at the same time. This was much faster than refining the 2 types of moon concealing flower. However, it was more reckless. The extra herbs would increase the probability of failure. Hence, whether it was Sun Sa or Ji Qing, they did not think highly of him. On the contrary, Tian Haiju's method had always been following Ji Qing's idea. The process was very smooth. It was just that it needed more time. I already said that the pharmacists of the land races are all trash. You can't even think of such a simple question. You are so stupid. Perhaps because the pill refining had entered the safest stage, Tianhaiju finally had the time to ridicule others. Even though Tianhai Pearl had already said this a few times, none of the pharmacists present could refute her, because what Tianhaiju said was a fact. Other than Ling Xiao, the rash one, the rest did not think of the correct method. That's all you've got. The methods you use still can't escape the rules. Furthermore, don't forget that you've already lost to me in the first round. If I'm trash, then you're worse than trash. Just when the audience and pharmacists were feeling indignant, a cold voice sounded. It's Ling Xiao. That's right, we still have him. He hasn't failed yet. Tianhaiju's face was a little ugly. She could ridicule any other pharmacist who participated in the competition. Only Ling Xiao she did not have the right to ridicule. This round, you will lose without a doubt. Tianhaijinju was silent for a long time before she finally said, from the moment you threw the 2 sets of herbs into the furnace at the same time, you did something reckless and stupid. You are even more stupid than those people. People who don't know anything and only know how to call others stupid are the ones who are truly ignorant. I can't even be bothered to bicker with you, because you're still no match for me in this second round. Ling Xiao chuckled and turned his gaze back to his alchemy platform. He wanted to use facts to teach the Heavenly Ocean Pearl a lesson. Well said. Deafening shouts could be heard from the audience. Then, to everyone's surprise, 2 crimson flames appeared above Ling Xiao's hands. This kind of flame was strong and vigorous, as if it could melt everything. What kind of flame is that? Strange flame? Immortal fire? In the audience, many people stood up and discussed the flame in Ling Xiao's hand. An alchemist couldn't lack fire or soul force. Thus, the stronger one's flame was, the stronger one's soul force would be. Combined with one's exquisite technique, one would definitely be able to refine outstanding pills. What Dan Qing and Ji Luoyu possessed was strange fire, and the crimson flame that Ling Xiao released, many people could not name it. They were even unable to determine its grade. The audience could not determine it, but those alchemists were very familiar with flames. It's the Samadhi true fire. Finally, someone said the answer. The Samadhi true fire of the 12 sacred fires. This is the highest grade divine fire. No wonder Ling Xiao, this fellow, dared to throw 2 sets of medicinal herbs into the pill furnace at the same time. Relying on this kind of divine fire, coupled with his ability, it's really possible to do things that others can't do. Ji Qing's face brimmed with a brilliant smile. Ling Xiao, this child, really gave him a pleasant surprise. Ha ha ha, this Ling Xiao really surprises people. This time, it's probably not easy for that sea race lass to want to win him. Ancestor Changle was also so happy that he could not close his mouth. Regarding the Heavenly Ocean Pearl's arrogance and despotism, he was very displeased in his heart. Now, there was finally a little fellow who could shut that arrogant lass up. How could he not be happy? He actually has the help of the divine fire. No wonder he's so confident. Ji Luoyu muttered to herself in surprise. Dan Qing also felt the intense heat from the divine fire, and his heart suddenly became somewhat restless. Compared to Ling Xiao, he seemed to have nothing. He was really a failure. The Moon Lady very much enjoyed the feeling of her man being treated as a hero. Now, in this square, only Ling Xiao could go against the sea race lass, turn the tide and become a true hero. Her man should be like this. Yun Ye's beautiful eyes also shone with extraordinary splendor. Hua Fuguang and Hua Luiying even hugged each other excitedly. Feng Mingpiao, Shue's beautiful eyes, shone brightly. Even the sea race's Heavenly Ocean Pearl was stunned for a moment. Then, she revealed a fierce expression. She had lost to Ling Xiao in the first round. No matter what, she could not lose again in this round. However, Ling Xiao didn't pay much attention to all these different kinds of attention. At this moment, his mind was completely focused on the alchemy furnace in front of him. The crimson flames of the true Samadhi fire rose under the alchemy furnace. It was quite mysterious and majestic. Another few minutes passed. Dan Qing and Ji Luoyu's pills were successfully refined and completed. After them, more than 100 people completed the test one after another. However, they did not look happy. This was because, although they had made up for their failure, they had taken the wrong path after all. They had merely passed. Everyone's gaze was fixed on Ling Xiao and the Heavenly Ocean Pearl. These two people were the real elites of the competition. Both of them were very fast. Both of them were very skillful. The only difference was that the Heavenly Ocean Pearl seemed to be more experienced and steady. It was as if she was not an 18-year-old girl, but an 80-year-old old man. On the other hand, although Ling Xiao's movements were not experienced enough, they were graceful and carefree. There was almost no sloppiness. Every movement seemed to have been precisely calculated. Both of them had their own unique sides, and both of them had their own attractive aspects. However, almost everyone present supported Ling Xiao. After all, the Heavenly Ocean Pearl was from the sea race. On the other hand, Ling Xiao was a representative of the land race, a human. Moreover, the Heavenly Ocean Pearl had previously said many things that made the audience and medicine master very unhappy. I originally thought that Ling Xiao had no other advantages other than his flames being more outstanding than the Heavenly Ocean Pearls. I did not expect that his refining speed would not be inferior to the other parties at all. Impressive. How did this guy train? As Ji Luoyu had already completed her alchemy, she had enough time and energy to watch the competition between the two. Ling Xiao's performance had refreshed her judgment of miracles time and time again. Chapter 1274. Damn it! How can he be so powerful? Dan Qing was still a little narrow-minded and not as carefree as Ji Luoyu. On one hand, he didn't want Tianhai Pearl to win. On the other hand, he was afraid that Ling Xiao would completely steal his limelight. It was simply contradictory. Wonderful. This is going to be a fierce battle between a dragon and a tiger. Who will be the final victor? Changle Old Ancestor couldn't help but exclaim, "This old man has seen many alchemists refining pills. Some of the so-called masters aren't even as sharp as these two young people. It's too wonderful." Old Ancestor is right. In terms of technique, I'm afraid that these two people are already invincible among the yellow-grade alchemists. The #1 alchemist of Changle Immortal Island echoed. That's because you can't. Medicine King's son Zai was somewhat unconvinced. After all, he was the Medicine King of White Tiger Continent. He can do what those two people can do. Hee, brother-son, why do you want to compete with children again? You're the famous Medicine King's son Zai. Even if you win against those two children, it's meaningless. Ji Qing chuckled. Humph, Medicine King's son, Zai snorted coldly and no longer spoke. Ji Qing, who do you think will have a better final result between the two? Changle Old Ancestor asked. This is hard to say. Ling Xiao's speed isn't slow, and his flame is better. However, the difficulty of the method used is very high. It's hard to say whether he will succeed in the end. Tianhai Pearl's flame isn't as good as Ling Xiao's, but her speed and experience don't lose to Ling Xiao. In addition, the method used is the most reliable and has the highest success rate. The outcome of the two is really a problem. Ji Qing shook his head. Even he found it difficult to predict the final result. In the square, Ling Xiao and Tianhai Pearl no longer paid attention to each other. They only focused on the alchemy furnace in front of them. Blue and red flames rose in the square, attracting everyone's attention. Hurry up, Ling Xiao. You're the hope of our continent. If you lose, we'll lose face. Ji Luoyu stood there with a pair of small hands tightly clenched. She was so nervous that her whole body was trembling. It's the final moment. The Heavenly Sea Pearl seems to be one step faster. All the pharmacists were very nervous. At this last moment, they felt as if their hearts were hanging in midair. This isn't good. Ling Xiao seems to be half a beat slower. What's going on? The everlasting joy ancestor's hunched body had already rushed to the railing in front of him. His hands gripped the railing tightly. He was even more nervous than when he was curing the poison himself. Don't panic. Speed is important at the last moment, but the success of the pill refinement is equally important. If the pill refinement fails, it will be meaningless no matter how little time is used. Ji Qing reminded. But it's too late, the Changle patriarch said agitatedly. Both pills are about to take shape, but the gap between Ling Xiao and me is getting bigger and bigger. Ji Qing did not deny this point. After all, in his opinion, Ling Xiao was indeed inferior to the heavenly sea pearl in terms of speed. Actually, the reason was very simple. The method used for the sky sea pearl was designed by Ji Qing. It was written in the books. How to refine it was just following the prescribed order. There was no need to think too much about it. However, the method used by Ling Xiao was different. It was an original creation. The further one went, the more problems one had to consider. If one delayed one step, the final speed would definitely not be as fast as the sky sea pearl. Can we win in terms of the quality of the pill? The Changle patriarch suddenly turned around and asked. No, the sky sea pearl already lost in this aspect in the first round. This time, she will definitely be very careful. Therefore, the extraordinary pill refined in the end is very likely to be of the perfect grade. If Ling Xiao places his hopes on this, he will definitely lose. Ji Qing shook his head and looked at Ling Xiao with some anticipation. He had a feeling that Ling Xiao would surprise him again. He would definitely not lose to the sky sea pearl, just like that. It seems that if I don't play hard, I won't be able to win against the sky sea pearl. Fortunately, I have already calculated it. Ling Xiao looked in the direction of the sky sea pearl and sneered. Suddenly, the cauldron in front of him shattered. This scene caused everyone to be taken aback. The cauldron exploded, failed, but when people looked at the broken cauldron, they saw a medicinal pill floating in the air, and it was spinning nonstop. He's crazy. Without a cauldron, how can he continue to refine pills? Medicine King Sun slapped the armrest of his chair and stood up abruptly. But I heard that in this world, there is a consummate skill that can refine pills without a cauldron. The Changle patriarch said, That's not something we can imagine. Rumor has it that this consummate skill was brought back from the gate of Heaven's Chosen. It can only be found on the land closest to the gate of Heaven's Chosen. Medicine King Sun shook his head, but he might really be able to. A slightly crazed smile emerged on Ji Qing's face. You're looking down on him too much. I'm also looking down on him too much. This brat might have received the guidance of some expert who returned from the gate of Heaven's Chosen. Look, he pointed at Ling Xiao. The pill that had not yet fully formed spun faster in midair. In addition to the Samadhi True Fire, a strong Scarlet Yang force was integrated into it. The pill unexpectedly solidified in an instant, round and smooth. Receive. Ling Xiao waved his hand, and the pill entered the tray he was holding. But because the temperature was too high, the metal tray instantly melted into molten iron. Bring me a special container. Ling Xiao roared. Catch. During the competition, if a container was needed to fill the pill, this was permitted by the rules. The one who threw the cold jade bottle to Ling Xiao, which had excellent heat resistance properties, was An Lian, who he encountered during the internal test. This person's attitude towards Ling Xiao had long changed from disdain and disgust to complete worship and reverence. After the pill entered the cold jade bottle, Ling Xiao finished refining. I'm sorry, little girl of the sea race. I'll finish first. Looking at the Tianhai pearl, Ling Xiao revealed a victorious smile. The Tianhai pearl did not pay attention to Ling Xiao. In her view, Ling Xiao was clearly anxious, so he used some special method to solidify the pill. But the result of this was that the pill's medicinal effect would deteriorate. Even if her speed was inferior in terms of quality, she was confident that she would be better. About 2 minutes later, the Tian Hai Pearl's pill was finally refined. She put away the pill and looked at Ling Xiao. "You're too eager for quick success and took a crooked path. This time, even if you beat me in speed, the quality is definitely inferior." Saying this, she stuffed her pill into the mouth of the mechanical bird. On the jade wall, the Tian Hai Pearl's name and score appeared. Perfect transcendent pill. Extremely fast speed. 150 points. Medicinal effect and speed. This score was 30 points higher than Ling Xiao's score in the first round. The Tian Hai Pearl's performance was not only her own unparalleled ability. Chapter 1275. Dan Qing and Ji Luoyu's expressions became unnatural when they saw Tian Hai Pearl's score. Although they had successfully passed, their score was only 60 points, barely passing. They had completely lost the duel with the Pearl of the Heavenly Sea. They had been utterly defeated. Wah! F***CK. Just as Tian Hai Pearl was looking at Ling Xiao with a smug expression, a burst of exclamations suddenly came from the audience. She hurriedly turned her head to look. On the jade wall, Ling Xiao's name was in first place. Perfect transcendent pill. Peerless speed, 160 points. 160 points. He had just scored 10 points more than Tian Hai Pearl. And these 10 points were his advantage in speed. The quality of their pills should be exactly the same. Cheating. Tian Hai Pearl's excited and smug expression instantly turned into shock and dissatisfaction. She didn't expect that Ling Xiao, who had clearly made the mistake of being impatient, would end up with a pill that was not inferior to hers in terms of quality. If this wasn't cheating, then what was? She couldn't accept this. This was too shameless. After the exclamations of shock, the cheers continued for more than 10 minutes before finally stopping. The audience was too excited. Many people even tried to rush past the security guards to give their idol, Ling Xiao, a warm hug. The entire plaza had turned into a sea of joy. Ling Xiao looked at Tian Hai Pearl indifferently and sneered. When the cheers finally quieted down, he said firmly, "A win is a win, a loss is a loss. Have you people of the Sea tribe always been so wishy-washy? You said I cheated, and this isn't the first time. Do you really have to show off your ignorance? You said I'm ignorant?" Tian Hai Pearl's face turned red with anger. "That's right, you're ignorant," Ling Xiao said disdainfully. "Do you know what the key factor in solidifying a pill is? It's temperature. The reason why divine fire is easier to refine pills is because it can reach a higher temperature. The faster the pill solidifies, the lower the chance of failure, and the less the ingredients will be lost. You think the quality of your pill is the same as mine, but in reality, your pill is inferior to mine. Do you understand why I had to blow up the furnace? Because that cauldron was too weak, it couldn't withstand the high temperature of my divine flame and crimson sun power. As an alchemist, you should now understand why my medicinal pill was completed earlier than yours, and why its medicinal effects are not inferior to yours, right? How could you possibly do that?" Tian Hai Pearl opened her mouth a few times, but in the end, she only asked one question. After she calmed down, she knew that Ling Xiao was right. Ling Xiao's divine flame combined with the power of the crimson sun was an absolutely heaven-defying combination in the world of pill refinement. You've already seen whether I can do it or not. Do you want me to demonstrate it to you again? Ling Xiao said disdainfully. "Ha ha ha, well said, little guy. Not only are your words righteous, but you also have real ability. To be honest, even this old man is shocked by you." Ji Qing laughed loudly. Obviously, he was very happy. Ling Xiao had shown shocking ideas from the beginning. There were a few times when even he couldn't see through him, especially when Ling Xiao broke the alchemy furnace and took out the pill. He really wanted to go up and slap this guy, because at that time he thought that this guy was a little too eager for quick success and was completely crazy. But now, It seemed that he was a little too impulsive. It was true that there were talents in every generation, and each generation was stronger than the last. Ling Xiao, this fellow, was truly admirable. Your Highness, Moon Maiden, I used to think that it was a little unbelievable that you liked Ling Xiao. But now, I increasingly find that I was ignorant. Ling Xiao's potential may be comparable to a king of a generation. He is a peerless genius. Princess Yin looked at the Moon Maiden and said her heartfelt words. From the beginning, he actually didn't intend to compete with the Tian Hai Pearl. He just followed his own plan step by step. He should still have a trump card that he hasn't used, right? The Moon Maiden just smiled. How could the man she had chosen be wrong? Cold Plum, Hua Fuguang, and Hua Luiying were very proud in their hearts. Slap. Ji Liu slapped Ling Xiao hard on the back and said excitedly, "When your alchemy furnace broke just now, I was almost scared to death. Fortunately, nothing went wrong. Otherwise, it would be so embarrassing. Why do you have so many strange ideas?" This time I'm convinced. But the next stage is the last one. Not only is it the most difficult, but it also has the most points. If I can get first place in the last stage, I can reverse the situation and still be the champion. Dan Qing snorted coldly. Even though he was extremely jealous of Ling Xiao at this moment, he had at least said something that was reasonable. However, this sentence still had a strong sense of provocation. Ling Xiao, you are indeed the most powerful young man I've ever seen. However, the difference between our scores isn't that big. Just like what that brat said, the final round is the one that will decide who the champion will be. At that time, let's see who is better. The Tian Hai Pearl's expression changed when she looked at Ling Xiao. She had been arrogant and rude before, but now she valued him. It was all because of Ling Xiao's ability. I hope that when I win, you won't say that I cheated. Otherwise, I will really look down on you. Ling Xiao actually didn't have a deep hatred for the Sea clan. If the Tian Hai Pearl had only come to participate in the alchemy conference, he wouldn't have felt anything wrong at all. However, this guy was too despicable. He had to provoke all the clans on the continent. Ling Xiao wasn't a turtle. He wouldn't shrink his head and let others scold him. Since the other party had provoked him, he naturally had to respond. It was still early when the second round was over. However, most of the pharmacists had exhausted themselves. Therefore, the organizers of the conference had set a 1-hour break. Next was the third round, which was also the last round. The remaining 100 or so pharmacists would compete. Even if they didn't have enough points in the first 2 rounds, as long as they could get first place in the last round, they would still be the champion. This was done on purpose by the organizers of the conference. Otherwise, the competition in the last round wouldn't be so intense. Most people wouldn't be so serious about it. Now that there was such an opportunity, it was believed that in the last round, everyone would give it their all and reveal all their trump cards. Compared to the first 2 rounds, the last round would be more exciting and exciting. Next, we will seal off the venue. Everyone can go have a meal and rest. Once you have recovered your energy, we will proceed to the last round. What I can tell you is that there will be no more tricks in the last round. Everything will depend on your abilities, so don't worry too much. The Changel Patriarch stood up and smiled. Let's disperse. Ling Xiao, wait a moment. Everyone looked at Ling Xiao enviously. It was undoubtedly an honor to be asked to stay by the Changel Patriarch alone. However, very few people would be jealous of Ling Xiao. After all, Ling Xiao had displayed extraordinary abilities in today's competition. He was definitely qualified to be treated well. There was no doubt about that. Chapter 1276. The Changel ancestor called out to Ling Xiao, but he only said one sentence. "Don't let that sea race girl get too arrogant." Ling Xiao smiled and nodded. "I'll do my best." Since things had progressed to this point, Ling Xiao naturally couldn't give up the championship to the Heavenly Sea Pearl. The most important thing was that the Moonstone was too important to the Moon Maiden. Ling Xiao swore that he had to obtain it. After an hour, The originally silent Changle Square began to move again. It was like a giant mechanical beast starting its new activity. This was the last round of the competition. It was also the final round. Obviously, there were many more people in the square than before. After arriving at the square, many people were still talking about the previous 2 rounds between Ling Xiao and the Heavenly Sea Pearl. When they talked about something exciting, they actually danced with joy. "Look, Ling Xiao is here." A voice suddenly sounded, and the whole square quieted down. Many alchemists who were originally discussing the 3rd round of the competition also looked in the direction of Ling Xiao. Although the badge on Ling Xiao's body was only at the high yellow grade, it was still very impressive. No one thought that this was his full strength. The previous 2 rounds were enough to prove that Ling Xiao's medical skills were far superior to the high yellow grade alchemist Ji Luoyu. At this moment, Ling Xiao was the hero of all the mainland races. He was irreplaceable in the eyes of all the alchemists present. This was because he was the only one who had defeated the insufferably arrogant Heavenly Sea Pearl twice in a row. The mystic world was like this. The strong were respected, and the strong were respected. In the alchemist profession, superb medical skills and alchemy skills were strength. They would also be worshipped and respected by countless people. "Ling Xiao, you're here. Have you rested well? I'm afraid that this battle will become the battlefield between you and the Heavenly Sea Pearl again. However, I won't give up." Ji Liu, this girl, was really very lively, or rather felt a little familiar. Regardless of Ling Xiao's attitude towards her, she had already treated Ling Xiao as an old acquaintance or even an old friend. Qian slapped Ling Xiao's back fiercely. Could the little medicine king be a little more reserved? "Let's work hard together," Ling Xiao said indifferently. He didn't have a good impression of Ji Luoyu, but now it could be said that she had changed her life. "I wonder where this Sky Sea Pearl came from. Although I'm helpless, she's really strong. I can't help but be convinced." Ji Luoyu was rarely convinced by anyone, but now she was convinced by Ling Xiao and the Pearl of the Sky Ocean. "Yes." Ling Xiao nodded. He could feel a special soul power from the Sky Ocean Pearl. This was something he had only sensed after cultivating the primordial spirit remnant scroll. Others might not be able to see it, but Ling Xiao could see that another person's soul was attached to the Sky Ocean Pearl. Ling Xiao wasn't sure who this person was, but he was definitely not young. He was probably from the same generation as the Medicine King, Sun Sa. He hadn't been competing with the Sky Ocean Pearl, but this person. However, he didn't say these words out loud. Even if he said it, no one would believe him. "Ling Xiao, if you're afraid, leave the last round to me. If I'm not wrong, the last round should be free play. At this time, the grade of the Medicine King will be the key. In this aspect, I'm stronger than you." Hearing this, Ling Xiao didn't need to look at the person to know that it was Danqing. This guy refused to admit defeat. He still felt that he had lost to Ling Xiao in something he wasn't good at, and that he could definitely beat Ling Xiao in something he was good at. Ling Xiao just smiled faintly. It was true that he refused to admit defeat, but if he didn't know his own limits, then he was stupid. In his eyes, Danqing was such a person. What's so great about that? Just wait and see. Seeing that Ling Xiao was just being perfunctory, Danqing was even more unhappy. He was now using all his strength to teach Ling Xiao a lesson in the last round. Ling Xiao ignored him. Instead, he turned around and nodded at the judges before sitting down at the preparation table. "The Sky Ocean Pearl is here." At this moment, there was a commotion. Ling Xiao turned his head and saw that the Sky Ocean Pearl had also arrived. This sea race girl walked close to Ling Xiao. She didn't even look at Danqing and Ji Luoyu. She just stared at Ling Xiao and said, "Celestial Emperor, in this last round, I'll let you know what despair is. You've said this more than once, but you've already lost to me twice. It's better to put away the battle of words." Ling Xiao looked at the Sky Ocean Pearl and suddenly smiled. "By the way, say hello to your friend for me. Also, Tell him that even if he has the ability of Medicine King Sunbu, he will still lose today." Hearing this, the Sky Ocean Pearl was obviously shocked. How could Ling Xiao see that there was another person's soul in her body? One had to know that even Medicine King Sunbu, Ji Qing and Chang'e ancestor, couldn't see through the secret. "Since you know, you should admit defeat because you can't win. In the first 2 rounds, I didn't use my full strength. In the last round, your opponent will be extremely powerful." The Sky Ocean Pearl gradually calmed down and then stared at Ling Xiao fiercely. "I forgot to tell you, I didn't use my full strength either," Ling Xiao said with a smile. Of course, he knew what the Sky Ocean Pearl meant by not using her full strength. In the first 2 rounds, the soul only guided and assisted the Sky Ocean Pearl to complete the pill refining. In the last round, the soul would completely control the Sky Ocean Pearl's body and would be even more powerful. "Sky Ocean Pearl, your opponent is not only him but also us." Dan Qing was really unhappy that the Sky Ocean Pearl didn't even look at him. Didn't this mean that he was much weaker than Ling Xiao? How could he accept this? However, the Sky Ocean Pearl still ignored him and went straight to her seat. "I'm so angry. Too arrogant." Dan Qing was so angry that his face was ashen. "All right, brother Dan Qing, what's there to be angry about now? When the 3rd round begins, we'll compete with the Sky Ocean Pearl. Isn't that great?" Ji Lui smiled, although this little girl was also angry in her heart. The Sky Ocean Pearl was about the same age as her, but she didn't put her in her eyes at all. How could she bear it? However, her thoughts were different from Dan Qing's. She wanted to use practical actions to prove that she wasn't weak. At the judges' table, Medicine King Sun saw Ji Qing, Chang'e Patriarch, and the number 1 alchemist of the Chang'e Celestial Island were already in their seats. Chang'e Patriarch said worriedly, "The last round is the key. If Ling Xiao loses to the Sky Ocean Pearl, then this alchemy conference will really become a joke." Ji Qing let out a sigh and said, "Now that things have come to this, we have no choice either and can only resign ourselves to fate. But I still have some faith in Ling Xiao after all. If he can create a miracle once or twice, he can create a 3rd time." Chapter 1277. The Heavenly Sea Pearl still has a lot of power that hasn't been released yet. I'm afraid Ling Xiao won't be able to win this round. Sun Bu had never liked Ling Xiao, but that didn't stop him from acknowledging Ling Xiao's strength. But even so, he still felt that it would be very difficult for Ling Xiao to defeat the Heavenly Sea Pearl because he could faintly see the shadow of an old friend of his from the Heavenly Sea Pearl. Although he couldn't be sure, as long as there was a 1 in 10,000 chance, it would be a huge problem. There's no point in talking anymore. Let's begin. Ancestor Chang'e shook his head helplessly. Since no one could predict the outcome, there was no point in being anxious. It was better to take 1 step at a time. The pharmacists participating in the 3rd round will now enter the arena. He stood up and announced. At this moment, both the audience and the participating pharmacists had already arrived. Unlike the previous 2 rounds, the pill refining platforms for the 3rd round were placed at a higher position in the center of the plaza. Ling Xiao, Dan Qing, Ji Luoyu, and the others didn't stand out. "Sister Yuanu, I'm going." Ling Xiao leaped and instantly arrived in front of the pill refining platform with his name on it. At this moment, the audience was in an uproar again. Everyone was discussing. "That's Ling Xiao, the 1st place of the previous 2 rounds. It's a pity that you didn't come to watch the competition. He's so young. I didn't expect the human race to have so many talents. It seems that the human race has been declining for a long time and is finally going to rise again. That's right. His name is Ling Xiao. He's the current Heavenly Emperor of the Heavenly Dynasty. He's very powerful. I'm so envious. Although I'm envious, I'm also under a lot of pressure. The Heavenly Sea Pearl of the Sea Tribe is too powerful. Ling Xiao spent a lot of effort to win the first 2 rounds. The 3rd round is the key." "That's right. I heard that the points of 1st place in the 3rd round far exceed the points of the previous 2 rounds combined. If Ling Xiao loses, then all his previous efforts will be wasted. We, the land races, can't afford to lose face like this. I hope he can win. Ling Xiao acted as if he didn't hear the unabashed discussions of the audience. Sitting there cross-legged, Ling Xiao recalled the various alchemy methods he had learned in the past, including the pills from the immemorial divine pill scripture. The third stage was very likely to be a free-for-all. In other words, everyone would have to rely on their own ability to refine pills. Whoever had the highest quality, highest grade, and best effect would win. This was a comprehensive assessment. Most likely, all the pharmacists would bring out their trump cards. The Heavenly Sea Pearl was not his only opponent. Danqing and Ji Luoyu were also troublesome. The two of them might have a special pill formula given by Medicine King Sunbu. There was still a great possibility for them to reverse the situation and win the third round. Therefore, he really couldn't underestimate his opponent. In the final stage, there were still 120 pharmacists left. After these people arrived in front of their respective alchemy platforms, they all closed their eyes and rested, just like Ling Xiao. They were all very cautious in this trial, and even the Sky Sea Pearl was no exception. Clang! Clang, clang! The magical treasure clock once again rang out with its loud and clear voice, echoing in the sky. In that instant, all the pharmacists in the competition opened their eyes, their expressions focused. The third stage is also the final stage of this alchemy conference. I won't say anything unnecessary. There is only one requirement for this stage, and that is to refine a pill that you think is the most outstanding within the range of ingredients provided by the organizer. Whoever wins will be the champion of this alchemy conference, even if your results in the first 2 stages were not very good. Therefore, there is no need to hide anything. Show off your abilities to your heart's content. If you need any ingredients, you can tell the pharmacist beside you, and they will bring them to you. Everyone's conditions are the same. Oh! Deafening cheers rang out from the spectator stands. After waiting for more than an hour, these people's suppressed excitement was finally completely released. Their auras broke through the clouds and soared into the sky. As expected, although Ling Xiao did not know the topic, he could roughly guess it. For the sake of fairness, the ingredients were provided by the organizer. This was enough to show that the everlasting joy, Celestial Island, had a deep foundation. This was because many of the ingredients for pills were not easy to find. To host this alchemy conference, the everlasting joy, Celestial Island, could be said to have spent a lot of money. However, where there was loss, there was gain. The benefits that they had gained from this alchemy conference were also obvious. First, they had promoted themselves. Second, the ticket sales were also a considerable sum of money. After the enthusiastic cheers temporarily subsided, the everlasting joy Celestial Island Patriarch continued. For the final stage, the time limit will be increased to 2 hours, so everyone will have enough time to think about the problem. Moreover, the chances of failure will also increase to 3 times. However, you have to pay attention here. Because precious ingredients are scarce, if you waste them, it is very likely that you will have to change your plan and settle for the next best thing. Therefore, my suggestion is to be fully prepared. No matter what pill you refine, try to succeed in 1 try. It might be very difficult to succeed in 1 try, but this was obviously the best-case scenario. Danqing and Ji Luoyu should have known the content of this stage long ago, so their faces were full of anticipation. They were not surprised at all. After all, they all had backers. As for the Heavenly Sea Pearl, she naturally guessed the content of the third stage like Ling Xiao. However, this third stage was not like the previous 2 stages. Even if you knew the content in advance, it was meaningless. In the end, it still depended on your true alchemy ability. After all, the venue, equipment, and ingredients were all provided by the organizer. Knowing in advance was at most mental preparation. The champion will definitely be the Oceanic Tribe, the Water God Temple. The heavenly sea pearl looked at Ling Xiao and made a provocative gesture. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. There was no point in arguing at this point. It was better to wait for the everlasting joy Celestial Island Patriarch to announce the start. Now, the final stage of the competition officially begins. Following the everlasting joy Celestial Island Patriarch's command, Dan Qing and Ji Thoyu stood up and said something to the medicine refiner beside them. They should be asking for ingredients. They were very clear that the everlasting joy Celestial Island's ingredients were limited. If they asked for them earlier, they would be able to obtain more precious ingredients. The pills refined would also be better. In any case, they knew in advance what they were going to refine. Ling Xiao naturally knew this, but he was not in a hurry. He had to observe what pill he was going to refine before making a decision, with the ability to extract elements. Even if he could not obtain precious ingredients, he was confident that he would be able to refine pills that would not lose to others. Although the others were anxious, they were also thinking. This stage could not be messed up. Otherwise, even if they succeeded in refining the pill, it would not be of much significance. However, after a short while, a few people began to take out the ingredients. These people could only refine one type of pill, so they had no choice at all. They had hesitated before because they were worried that they would not succeed in refining the pill. Now, they had made a decision because they had to fight with their backs against the wall. Chapter 1278. For all the alchemists present, the last round was a fight to the death. They had to cut off all means of retreat, or else they wouldn't be able to win. Anyway, it was the last round. Even if they were eliminated, it didn't matter. If they succeeded, they still had a chance to fight. Wind and rain pill. After Dan Qing had gathered all the ingredients, Ji Qing could tell what he was going to concoct. Dan Changle, your everlasting joy immortal island is really generous. This wind rain pill is one of the best peak grade yellow grade pills, second only to peak grade yellow grade pills. For Dan Qing, the success rate of concocting peak grade yellow grade pills should be around 80%. Hee, we're not as generous as the Medicine King. The little Medicine King is probably going to refine the 1,000 hammer 100 refinement pill, which is also the strongest among the top yellow pills. If Danqing and Ji Luoyu succeed in refining these two pills at the same time, I'm afraid it's hard to tell who will win. The everlasting joy patriarch laughed. Without Ling Xiao and the Sky Sea Pearl, they won't have a problem winning. But now it's a bit troublesome. Medicine King's son Sa didn't look happy. Ji Luoyu and Danqing had reached the level of yellow super alchemists and could refine yellow super pills. However, the problem was that the success rate of these two alchemists was only 10%. That was why they had to settle for the next best thing, which was a yellow, grade top, grade medicinal pill. At the very least, the success rate would be much higher. However, it would be difficult to win with a top yellow pill. Sun Sa felt that the Sky Sea Pearl and Ling Xiao would at least choose to refine a yellow super pill. The Sky Sea Pearl started to ask for ingredients. She said a lot, but the organizers didn't have any. She couldn't help but curse. The everlasting joy immortal island is only SOO. How can such a poor sect hold an alchemy convention? After saying that, she cursed as she picked some medicinal herbs that the organizer had. It wasn't that the everlasting joy immortal island was poor, but the Sky Sea Pearl's requirements were too harsh. The ingredients she asked for were difficult to get even for the Heavenly Dragon Trading Firm, let alone the everlasting joy immortal island. Some of them could only be gathered near the heavens' chosen gate. She's probably going to refine the domain origin energy pill. Medicine King's son Sa frowned. It's really a yellow super pill. Only Grotto Heaven Realm and above can use. This little girl is bold. Domain of cultivation. She's only at the first Grotto Heaven of her. Ji Qing smiled. I don't think this little girl will mess around. But Ling Xiao will be in trouble if she does. Basically, the yellow-grade super elixir requires the cultivation of Grotto Heaven Realm, but he is only a 10 Directions Heaven Realm martial artist. This is going to be difficult. Medicine King's son, Boo said lightly. See? Of, two. T, of. He was only concocting high yellow-grade pills? Could it be that he was no match for Danqing and Liu? Astonishment, absolute astonishment. The Heaven Origin Physique pill that Ling Xiao refined was a high yellow-grade pill. Perhaps for ordinary people it was a very precious thing, but for the last 120 alchemists it might not be too precious, especially for Medicine King's son Sa, Ji Qing, and the Everlasting Joy Immortal Island. It was not worth mentioning. They did not expect that Ling Xiao would actually plan to refine such a trash pill. It was simply unacceptable. But why would Ling Xiao care whether they accepted it or not? His mind had long been completely focused on refining the medicinal pills. The success rate of refining a high yellow-grade pill was absolutely 100% for him. Even if it was Danqing and Ji Luoyu refining this level of pill, they would probably have a 99% success rate. He chose this because the difficulty was low and the quality of the ingredients was low, so he did not have to worry about failure. But even so, he was still very careful and serious, because this had become the basic quality of an alchemist. In just 5 minutes, Ling Xiao became the first person to successfully refine the pill. However, he did not keep the pill. Instead, he placed it on a tray at the side. What is this kid doing? Such a rushed high yellow-grade pill. Even if it is a perfect pill, it still cannot be compared to other people's super yellow-grade pills. Could it be that he is planning to throw the game? The Everlasting Joy ancestor looked at Ling Xiao in confusion. He did not understand what this kid was thinking. After Ling Xiao finished refining the first pill, he walked towards the assistant alchemist and asked for another set of ingredients. According to the rules, he had the qualifications to ask for 3 sets of ingredients. Therefore, the assistant alchemist was only stunned for a moment, but he quickly went to prepare it for him. While waiting for the ingredients, Ling Xiao looked around. Among the 120 alchemists, there were close to 100 who were refining high yellow-grade pills. There were also 15 who were refining top yellow-grade pills. The remaining few were refining super yellow-grade pills. Among them were Danqing, Jiluoyu, and Tian Haizhu. The higher the grade of the pill, the longer it would take to refine. Therefore, at this moment, other than those who had failed, Danqing, Jiluoyu, and Tian Haizhu had just finished refining their ingredients. Refining was a very important process. It was to remove the impurities in the ingredients. Otherwise, it was very likely that it would cause an explosion. That would be troublesome. Looks like the final champion will be the competition between the alchemists refining super yellow-grade pills. However, I'm afraid that your efforts will be in vain. Ling Xiao smiled. At this moment, the second set of ingredients had arrived. He smiled at the assistant alchemist and began refining again. Last time, it was the Heaven Origin Physique Elixir. This time, it's the Heaven Origin Soul Elixir. Both are high-grade, yellow-grade elixirs. Does he think that the more elixirs he concocts, the higher his score will be? Ancestor Changle's brows were already furrowed. Perhaps he has other ideas. Let's see. Ji Qing also frowned. However, he was thinking of another possibility. It was just that he could not confirm it at the moment. If it was really as he thought, this Ling Xiao was a little too crazy. It was not that Ling Xiao did not see the expressions on the judges' faces. It was just that he did not care at all. From the beginning of the alchemy conference, he was not affected by others. He was wholeheartedly refining pills according to his own plans. When Ling Xiao began refining the second pill, Tian Haizhu, Danqing, Jiluoyu, and a few other alchemists who were more skilled had just started to put the ingredients into the pill furnace. Chapter 1279. Once the pill refinement began, the number of people who failed gradually increased. As the black smoke rose one after another, some of the 120 people walked out one after another. There was no anger on their faces, only helplessness and regret. Because in the first 2 rounds, they could find excuses to say that they weren't suitable for questions. But the last round was a contest of strength. To them, they failed 3 times in a row because their strength was too weak. They couldn't blame others. Great waves washing away the sand. Survival of the fittest. Don't underestimate this small alchemy conference. It was also a cruel selection. Those who weren't strong enough couldn't make it to the end. And those who could make it to the end were definitely the cream of the crop. Previously, many people didn't understand why there was a 1-hour break before the last round. Now they finally understood that the difficulty of this round was really high. The consumption was also shocking. Many alchemists' faces turned ugly, even though alchemists' physiques were generally much better than ordinary martial artists. Such a high workload was still unbearable for them. Let's not bother about Ling Xiao first. I don't understand what he's doing. Between the Tianhai Pearl, Danqing, and Luoyu, who will win? They're all yellow-grade super elixirs. Once they're refined, how can we determine who's better? Ancestor Chengel asked Ji Qing anxiously. Although he still had confidence in Ling Xiao, the problem was that he didn't understand what Ling Xiao was doing, so he could only automatically ignore it. There are many factors to determine. The first is naturally the quality. Whoever has the better effect will be the champion. The second is speed. If the quality is the same, then whoever is faster will win. If both of these factors can't be determined, then we'll have to look at the actual effect. This is more complicated to determine, but it's not impossible. Ji Qing explained, but the last situation is basically impossible. After all, to Danqing and Jiluoyu, the success rate of refining yellow-grade super elixirs is too low. It's different for the Tianhai Pearl. I think her success rate of refining yellow-grade super elixirs should be above 90%. 90%? Doesn't that mean it's over? Ancestor Changel was completely dumbfounded. Originally, he was hoping that Danqing and Jiluoyu would be able to defeat the Pearl of the Sky Seas, while Ling Xiao was useless. But now, it seemed that things weren't going to be that simple. Bang! At this moment, on Jiluoyu's pill refining platform, a cloud of black smoke rose, and a dull sound indicated that her first refinement had failed. It's over. Everlasting Joy shook his head and sighed bitterly. He discovered that everything in the furnace of the Heavenly Sea Pearl was very stable. Furthermore, looking at the other party's relaxed manner, he knew that there wouldn't be any problems. If that was the case, Jiluoyu would not be able to catch up in time. Even though she quickly ordered for a second set of materials to be prepared, as long as the Heavenly Sea Pearl did not fail, she would not be able to catch up. Sister Luoyu, don't worry. I will definitely win the Sky Sea Pearl. Danqing shouted at Jiluoyu, his heart filled with pride. He finally had the chance to be a hero. Ling Xiao was messing around, and Jiluoyu had failed in her first refinement. Only he was now on par with the Pearl of the Sky Seas. Jiluoyu laughed bitterly and said, Big brother Danqing, focus on refining pills. I'm placing all my hopes on you. When Danqing heard this, his heart felt even lighter. It was as if he had already become the champion of the pill refining conference and could look down on everyone else. However, he did not relax. At this moment, if he also failed in refining pills, he would lose a lot of face. Therefore, he could not fail. While he was wholeheartedly refining the pill, on Ling Xiao's side, the second pill had already been refined. Prepare this set of materials for me. Ling Xiao called out to the assistant pharmacist, then took out the prescription he had prepared and handed it to him. What's wrong with that kid? Is he going to refine another high-grade yellow pill? What's the point of that? Old Ancestor Changel was in complete despair. In the audience, many people who had high hopes for Ling Xiao and worshipped him crazily began to look at him with disdain. Their mouths were not clean. Scram, you piece of trash. What celestial emperor? You're just trash. Yes, that's right. You're really a piece of trash. I thought you were amazing, but in the end, you refined such trash pills. Scram, I don't want to see you. If the scolding was not considered harsh, there were actually people in the crowd who threw eggs and rotten vegetables at Ling Xiao. This was a serious problem. Smack! The egg smashed against the protective wall and shattered. Although it did not hit Ling Xiao, it was definitely an insult to Ling Xiao. I'll only warn you once. If anyone dares to scold me again, I'll cut off their tongue. If anyone dares to throw anything at me again, I'll cut off their arms. Ling Xiao glared coldly at the audience and said coldly, "It's none of your business what I'm refining. If you don't want to watch, then scram. Don't fart over there." Perhaps it was because Ling Xiao's recent reputation was not weak. Many people shut their mouths and kept the things in their hands that they wanted to throw. After all, no one wanted to have their tongue cut off or their arms cut off. However, there were still people who were bold. In this world, there were always people who did not take others' words seriously. Damn, so what if I scold you? You're just a warrior from the Sky Dragon continent. How dare you call yourself a celestial emperor? You just won the first 2 rounds. I've bet everything on you. If you lose this time, I'll kill you. As he spoke, he threw a cabbage at Ling Xiao. He was a disciple of Chang'e Celestial Island. He did not believe that Ling Xiao would dare to attack him in front of old ancestor Chang'e. Moreover, this alchemy conference was hosted and organized by Chang'e Celestial Island. Unless Ling Xiao did not want to live anymore, he would definitely not dare to do that. However, he was wrong. He did not understand Ling Xiao at all. At this moment, if he did not kill the chicken to warn the monkey, there would be more people who would follow suit. Ling Xiao had already warned these people. He had given them a chance. Unfortunately, they did not understand how precious it was. While others were anxiously refining pills, he actually broke through the protective wall and rushed into the audience. With a chop of his hand, sword qi filled the air. At the same time, he cut off the Chang'e Celestial Island disciple's tongue and arm. Ah! Miserable screams resounded through the square. The noisy Chang'e square instantly quieted down. Blood. Dark red blood. However, Ling Xiao had already returned to the refining platform. The 3rd set of materials had also been delivered. Old ancestor, that kid is too much. Is he really going to attack? The number 1 alchemist of Chang'e Celestial Island frowned. No matter how much he admired Ling Xiao, he could not tolerate Ling Xiao killing a disciple of Chang'e Celestial Island in front of so many people. You knew that Ling Xiao was that kind of person, yet you still provoked him. You deserved it. Old ancestor Chang'e's words stunned the number 1 alchemist. Chapter 1280. Ling Xiao had cut off the tongues and arms of the disciples of Everlasting Joy Celestial Island. The Everlasting Joy ancestor coldly snorted, and then said in a clear voice, "Even if we lose the last round, Ling Xiao is still our hero. If anyone dares to insult him again, he doesn't need to do anything. This old man will clean up and smash them for him. Our Everlasting Joy Celestial Island doesn't need immoral fools." "Hee Dan Chang'e, you didn't protect your own people?" Medicine King's son asked with a smile. "This old man is the organizer of this alchemy conference. I will only uphold justice and reason, not protect my own people. Moreover, that kind of smashing won't bring any benefits to the Everlasting Joy Celestial Island. Instead, it will only drag the Celestial Island down. He deserved to die." The Everlasting Joy ancestor said lightly. The first half of the sentence might have been said casually, but the second half was the truth. The Everlasting Joy Celestial Island doesn't need fools. After he said that, no one in the audience dared to say anything to Ling Xiao. Even if they were criticizing him in their hearts, they wouldn't dare to say it out loud. Otherwise, their tongues would have been cut off or their arms would have been chopped off. No one would be willing to accept such an outcome. He's really going to do that. At this moment, Ji Qing's face revealed a fanatical expression. He was so excited that his body was trembling. Impossible. Is he crazy? That method has less than a 30% chance of success. He only has one chance left. Does he dare to do it? Medicine King Sun seemed to have guessed what Ling Xiao wanted to do. He was also a little excited, and his face was flushed. Why is it impossible? The first pill he refined was the Heaven Origin Physique Elixir. The second was the Heaven Origin Soul Elixir. And the third was the Heaven Origin Inner Strength Elixir. If these 3 elixirs are separated, it might not be surprising. They can improve a martial artist's body, soul, and inner strength, respectively. However, if they are refined together, it is possible to refine an elixir that is infinitely close to the mysterious grade, the Grotto Heaven Realm 3-point Restoration Elixir. Ji Qing said excitedly, I didn't misjudge this kid. He is really bold. If he succeeds, he will definitely be more outstanding than the Sky Sea Pearl. You're talking about after he succeeds. If he doesn't succeed, then all his previous efforts will be wasted. With his ability, he shouldn't have taken such a risk. Such a method can only be said to be stupid. Medicine King Sun coldly snorted and said with dissatisfaction, Perhaps, but since he has the guts, there is a possibility of success. I don't believe that he would do something that he has no confidence in. Ji Qing said with a smile, Let's wait and see. The reason why Medicine King Sun refused to believe that Ling Xiao could refine the 3 points recovery pill, which was infinitely close to the mysterious grade. Failure? Falling into the abyss, unable to extricate himself. Or had he succeeded? Had he become the champion of the Alchemy Conference? What kind of answer sheet will you give us? Ji Qing looked towards Ling Xiao. Towards this youth, he already had an exceptionally high opinion of him. Of course, Medicine King Sun's words were not wrong. Ling Xiao's choice was a risk. There was only a fine line between heaven and hell. In the end, it was all up to Ling Xiao to decide which side he would lean towards. At this moment, Ling Xiao had successfully refined the 3rd pill. When the 3 pills were placed together, Ling Xiao suddenly closed his eyes. Your Highness Moon Maiden, what do you think of Senior Ji Qing's words? Yun looked at the Moon Maiden. She felt that among the people present, only the Moon Maiden could truly see through Ling Xiao's background. I don't know either. The Moon Lady smiled and shook her head. That guy is someone who likes challenges. Refining a yellow grade super pill is too easy for him. That's why he chose a more difficult method, to refine a 3-point restoration pill that is infinitely close to the mysterious grade. In that case, you don't know if he will succeed. Yunya asked in surprise. That's right. I don't know, but I believe that he will succeed. If the Moon Maiden had to ask for a reason, she would definitely say that it was because she liked Ling Xiao. But obviously, that reason was not what Yunya wanted. I also believe in Master. Cold Plum's attitude was also very firm. Cold Plum, your trust is blind. Yunya smiled bitterly. You're wrong. I'm not blind. I've never been blind. Master has this ability. That's why I believe in him. Princess Yunya, you still don't understand Master. If he wants to win, in terms of alchemy, even the Medicine King Sun may not be his opponent. Cold Plum said lightly. How is this possible? Of course, Yunya didn't believe it. Medicine King Sun was a mysterious grade alchemist. He was not someone that a yellow grade alchemist could be compared to. I knew you would say that, so I don't want to explain. When the results come out later, you will know. Your Heavenly Dragon Trading Company's idea of approaching Master and wanting to cooperate with him is right, but don't have any crooked thoughts. Otherwise, the consequences will be very serious. Cold Plum said lightly. On the surface, she seemed to worship and trust Ling Xiao blindly, but in reality, that was not the case. Although Cold Plum didn't like to express her thoughts, her heart was as clear as a mirror. At this time, those who were ridiculing Ling Xiao in their hearts quieted down because they found that what Ling Xiao was going to do was not what they had imagined. A ball of crimson flame began to burn. The flames in the entire square were trembling because of it. Tianhai, Pearl, glared at Ling Xiao angrily. Once the flame went out of control, it was very likely that it would lead to the failure of the alchemy. Unfortunately, she had fallen into his trap. The first refinement was declared a failure when it was about to be completed. Dan Qing was also depressed. He had also fallen for it and failed to refine the elixir. You can't blame me for this. It's not my intention. Ling Xiao shrugged. After all, the divine fire was the master of all flames. All the flames in the world were born and derived from the 12 divine fires. Damn it! At this time, whether it was Tianhai Pearl or Dan Qing, they didn't have time to blame Ling Xiao. They quickly asked the assistant pharmacist to help gather the materials and began another refinement. Ji Luoyu was lucky because she hadn't had time to light the fire and had just finished refining the herbs. So at this time, she was faster than Tianhai Pearl and Dan Qing. However, there wasn't the slightest trace of relief on her face. Even without other people's influence, her success rate of refining a yellow-grade super elixir was not very high. Boom! At this time, there was a sudden loud sound from Tianhai Pearl's side. A humanoid figure appeared behind her. At this time, Tianhai Pearl had no choice but to fight. She had to use all her strength to ensure that the second elixir was successfully refined. The moment this figure appeared, Tianhai Pearl's eyes turned white for a moment, but in an instant they returned to normal. It was just that her eyes, which were originally clear, were now sinister and ruthless. She was completely possessed. Ling Xiao felt the power of Tianhai Pearl at this time. He couldn't help but be shocked. It's really her. Medicine King's son suddenly stood up. Chapter 1281. Is it the woman who was defeated by you in medical skills and committed suicide? Ji Qing asked. Yes, it's her. Back then, only she and I competed for the title of Medicine King in the White Tiger Continent. She lost and chose to commit suicide. I didn't expect her to come back. Medicine King's son, Zai said with a gloomy face. Dan Changle, stop the alchemy conference immediately. No one can win against that person unless this old man does it personally. Wait, Ji Qing shook his head and said, maybe it's not as bad as you think. No matter how powerful she is, she's just a low-level profound alchemist when she died. At most, she can refine low-level profound pills, but the success rate won't be too high. So if I'm not wrong, she should choose a pill of the same grade as the 3-point recovery pill. As long as Ling Xiao doesn't lose, even if it's a tie, he should win by relying on the advantages of the previous 2 rounds. Medicine King's son, Zai, roared. Do you really believe that Ling Xiao can refine the 3-point recovery pill? Do you really believe that, kid? There's no other way. Don't forget, our rules don't say that we can't rely on martial spirits. Ji Qing reminded. For that Tianhai Pearl, that woman has already become her martial spirit. We can't stop it. Otherwise, we'll become a joke if word gets out. Ji Qing is right. Our everlasting joy immortal island can't afford to lose face like this. Ancestor Changle shook his head and said, Humph, if that guy takes the championship, your everlasting joy immortal island will lose even more face. Do you really plan to continue? Medicine King's son, Zai asked coldly. Of course. Ancestor Changle nodded and said, I believe in Ling Xiao. He can cure my poison, so he must have a way to refine the 3-point recovery pill. Bang! At this moment, a black smoke suddenly rose from Ling Xiao's alchemy platform. Although the 3 pills didn't shatter, they cracked almost at the same time and fell to the bluestone floor. Failed? Ancestor Changle and Ji Qing's faces instantly turned ashen. Ling Xiao was defeated just like that? Medicine King's son sneered and said, I have already said that this method of refining pills is not something that a little guy like him can try. Even I don't dare to say that I have a 50% chance of success. He is simply looking for a dead end for himself. Perhaps he already knew that the heavenly sea pearl would refine pills of the same quality. If he wanted to win, he had no other choice but to do so. Ji Qing let out a sigh and said, "This child's observational skills are good. It's just a pity that his luck is a little bad, failing at the last step." Patriarch Changle shook his head helplessly. Were they really going to let a member of the oceanic race stand there and laugh at them? "Ha ha ha! Kid, I had some expectations for you, but I didn't expect you to be so useless. Looks like the champion of today's alchemy conference is mine." The pearl of the heavenly sea burst into an extremely excited and complacent laugh. Nothing made her happier than seeing Ling Xiao fail. After all, Ling Xiao had already wasted 3 chances. Once he failed, he would be eliminated directly. There would be no chance for him to make a comeback. "Ling Xiao, you really dropped the ball at the crucial moment. Since you can't do it, then watch me." Dan Qing was a little excited. Ling Xiao's failure created a stage for him to express himself. Sigh. Ji Luoyu let out a sigh. She did not expect it to be like this, but she could only concentrate on refining pills. Time passed by in minutes. Ling Xiao stood there, his right hand supporting his cheek, as if thinking about something. It's been more than 10 minutes. That guy should be crippled. He even blamed us for scolding him. That's right. He can't even compare to Dan Qing and the Little Medicine King, let alone the Pearl of the Heavenly Sea. What a pity. A hero turned into a coward in an instant. The crowd began to whisper again. People seemed to have forgotten about the guy who had his tongue cut off. However, this time, Ling Xiao did not say anything, nor did he make a move. He did not have the time to do so. The last round was very special. As long as he did not choose to leave, he would not be eliminated. Therefore, he still had a chance to turn the tide. However, he still had to think about what to do. It's a success. At this moment, Ji Luoyu's excited voice rang out. The top yellow grade pill that she had refined was finally out of the furnace. A mesmerizing medicinal fragrance wafted out. As expected of the Little Medicine King, he withstood the huge pressure and refined a top yellow grade pill. He's much better than Ling Xiao. At this moment, only Ling Xiao, the Pearl of the Heavenly Sea, Dan Qing, and Ji Luoyu were left in the arena. The rest of the people had either succeeded in refining a top yellow grade pill or a top yellow grade pill, but its quality was obviously not as good as Ji Luoyu's. Otherwise, they had failed all 3 attempts and walked out of the alchemy platform. At this moment, Ji Luoyu had finished refining and was relieved. She walked out of the alchemy platform and went to the VIP seats to watch the rest of the competition. Another 10 minutes passed. Dan Qing's top yellow grade pill was also successfully refined. Unfortunately, he had nothing to be happy about. He had finished 10 minutes later than Ji Luoyu. The effect of the pill was about the same. He would definitely not be able to get first place. He walked out of the alchemy platform unhappily and cursed. "Ling Xiao, you're the one who delayed me for so long. If you can't win against the Pearl of the Heavenly Sea, then you can go to hell." Win against me? With just him? The Pearl of the Heavenly Sea sneered disdainfully. Although the time needed to refine the pill was much longer than Dan Qing's, the quality and grade of the pill were much higher. Moreover, everything was very stable. She believed that she would definitely be the champion today. "Little brat, do you want Master to help you? Anyway, that little girl over there is cheating." At that moment, the voice of his master, Yuan Venerate, rang out in Ling Xiao's mind. "No need. Even if I lose, I have to rely on my own ability to complete this assessment. Otherwise, it would be meaningless." Ling Xiao shook his head gently. He knew that Yuan Venerate meant well. He also knew that as long as Yuan Venerate helped, he would definitely be able to come back from the dead and refine the pill successfully. However, he couldn't do that. If he asked for help whenever he encountered difficulties, he would only continue to sink on this path. This time he would either fail and become a pitiful person who would be mocked by others, or continue to work hard with this humiliation. Or he would succeed and break through his shackles, improve his alchemy skills, and toughen his temperament. This was a hurdle. If he could overcome it, then everyone would be happy. If he couldn't, then he could only accept it. Ha ha ha, it's over, it's all over. In at most a quarter of an hour, my pills will come out, and all of you will be defeated by me. Pitiful landraces, a bunch of trash. Perhaps it was because she had finally overcome the most difficult moment, but the Pearl of the Heavenly Sea laughed heartily. Medicine King Sun, Sue was about to say something when a clear voice suddenly rang out. Isn't it a little too early to be happy? This was the voice that the Pearl of the Heavenly Sea hated the most. It came from Ling Xiao. Chapter 1282. Ji Luoyu looked at Ling Xiao excitedly. She thought that everything was over, but when she saw the confident smile on Ling Xiao's face, she suddenly felt relieved. Damn, he only knows how to act cool. But if this guy can really win against the Heavenly Sea Pearl, I will be convinced. Even though Dan Qing was extremely unwilling, he hated the Heavenly Sea Pearl even more. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. At least for the time being, he decided to support Ling Xiao. Kid, don't try to be mysterious. I don't believe that your pills are already broken. Without the ingredients, can you still turn the tables? People should know their limits. Don't be too complacent. Otherwise, you will become a laughing stock. Heavenly Sea Pearl mocked in disdain as she controlled the flames in the cauldron. In her opinion, Ling Xiao was just unwilling to admit defeat. That was why he was acting cool. There was no meaning to it. However, Ling Xiao only smiled. He did not care about the Heavenly Sea Pearl's mockery. After all, at this point in time, not to mention the Heavenly Sea Pearl, even other people would not believe that he could turn the tables. Medicine King's son, Zai shouted angrily, Ling Xiao, don't be stubborn. You will only embarrass yourself. Give up, don't be stubborn. Ling Xiao looked at Sun Zai and sneered, You can't do it, but that doesn't mean that I can't. How much do you know about me? Then he looked at the alchemy table. With a wave of his hand, the 3 cracked pills were thrown back into the cauldron. A ball of light flew out from his hand. It was not a flame, but the power of the red sun, using light and heat to refine pills. This was probably the first time since ancient times. It was impossible to say that there would be no one in the future, but it was definitely unprecedented. Medicine King's son, Zai did not utter a word. He just stared at Ling Xiao's cauldron. Although light and heat were not as powerful as divine fire, it was easier to control. This way, it would not cause the alchemy cauldron to collapse. At this moment, Ling Xiao was bathed in the sunlight and turned into a strange person, shrouded in golden light. These lights came from the scarlet sun in the sky. Then, through his hands, he placed it on top of the pill furnace. The temperature could be spread out more evenly and wouldn't condense into one piece. Refining pills with light and heat can be said to be a pioneering feat. I'm afraid that this kid is even more amazing than we imagined. Ji Qing sighed emotionally. That's right, to be able to absorb the power of the Scarlet Sun without a strong enough soul force. It's absolutely impossible. This brat's soul force is simply terrifying. Patriarch Changle sighed emotionally. Not only that, his body has probably been tempered by various heavenly treasures. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to withstand such a high temperature of the Scarlet Sun energy. This kid's soul force, internal force, and body are all top-notch amongst his peers. Ji Qing's evaluation this time was even higher. If not for his cultivation being restricted, I'm afraid that he would be able to directly refine a mysterious rank pill. Dan Qing and Ji Luoyu stood there, dumbfounded at this scene. If it were them, wanting to do this was simply impossible. Not to mention controlling light and heat to refine pills. Even communicating with the Scarlet Sun and absorbing its power would be difficult to accomplish. The ugly face of the pearl of the heavenly seas looked very calm, but that was just a fake face. Her real face was already showing shock and disbelief. She had never heard of a failed pill refinement being able to reverse the situation. Could it be that this Ling Xiao was going to create a miracle? She was really panicking, because once Ling Xiao was able to refine a medicinal pill of the same quality as the one she had refined, then relying on the advantage he had gained from the first 2 trials, Ling Xiao would definitely win. No, I shouldn't be afraid of him. It's impossible for this guy to succeed. The Pearl of the Heavenly Seas shook her head. She thought of many possibilities, but no matter how she thought about it, it was impossible for her to refine 3 ruined pills into a super pill that surpassed the yellow rank. I must be confident. Even the Medicine King's son, Sa, couldn't do this. How could a mere little guy like him do it? Son Sa, do you think he still has a chance? Ji Qing asked. Not even a shred of a chance. I've already said before, he's purely playing with fire. Although it's possible to refine a failed pill, it's more difficult than the previous 3 complete pills. If it was before, he still had about a 20% chance of success. Then now, he doesn't even have a 10% chance of success. Do you think it's necessary for us to bet on this? Although the Medicine King's son Sa admired Ling Xiao for being able to quickly walk out from the shadow of failure, he would never believe that Ling Xiao could succeed. Is it? But in my opinion, he still has a chance. Although he may not win, at least he hasn't lost the last chance. Ji Qing said with a smile. Do you dare to bet? Son Sa sneered. Bet on what? Ji Qing asked. If he wins, I can help you refine a black rank middle-level pill. As for what pill to refine, you say it yourself, and I'll provide the materials. Sun Sa said, if he loses, no matter who is the champion, you have to give me the White Tiger Pill Sutra in your hands. Haha, after all this time, you've been thinking about the book in my hands. But why should I bet with you? That Ling Xiao has nothing to do with me. Ji Qing said with a smile. So, you still don't have confidence in him? Sun Sa also smiled. Trying to goad me? Well, even if you succeed, I'll bet with you. Ji Qing said in a clear voice. Good, it's a deal. I still believe in your character. Medicine King's son, Sa revealed a smile. He had been coveting the White Tiger Pill Sutra in Ji Qing's hands for a long time. Unfortunately, the other party's cultivation was stronger than his, and his influence was greater than his. It was simply impossible to snatch it. So the only thing he could do was to use such a small trick to get it from the other party's hands. On the square, Ling Xiao was still heating the pill furnace with light and heat. But it was obvious that he was controlling the temperature. Until now, he had not used the divine fire, which meant that he had not really begun the fusion. It was not realistic to rely on light and heat to fuse 3 parts of the recovery pill. The reason why Ling Xiao dared to fight with a senior like the Pearl of the Sky Sea was, of course, relying on the divine fire he possessed. Rise! A moment later, Ling Xiao withdrew the light and heat, and a thick liquid flew out from the furnace. This was the fusion of water and pill. Without waiting for it to solidify, Ling Xiao's right hand suddenly spewed out the true samadhi fire and began to calcine the liquid. Shrouded in smoke, the liquid began to solidify at an accelerated rate. Not enough. Not enough. Ling Xiao felt that this temperature was not enough. If this continued before the liquid solidified, the medicinal effect would have been completely lost. Chapter 1283. Ling Xiao didn't want to see the loss of medicinal effects. Therefore, the flames had to be even more intense. But with his level of training, it was already praiseworthy to be able to control the samadhi fire to such an extent. What else could he do? Of course. At this moment, Ling Xiao's eye of Tai Chi turned. The eye of the sage. Above his head, a silhouette covered in white light sat in a lotus position. It began to sing a battle song. Defeat the sea kind's alchemist, no longer willing to be a slave. The gathering of alchemists has been invaded. You say the Tian Hai Pearl, I say, why be afraid of her? Oh, don't kowtow to them. Unyielding is a weapon buried in every nerve, awakened by the smell of medicine. Failure is not allowed. Victory doesn't have to wait, because of the arrival of the celestial emperor. Suddenly, the entire world began to burn. The godly fire and the smell of medicine invaded his blood vessels. The strategy this time was to use all of his firepower, all of his firepower, all of his firepower, all of his firepower. As the battle song began to play, the already ferocious samadhi fire became even hotter. The solidifying speed of the liquid increased as well. Almost everyone present was dumbfounded by this scene. Though they've never seen alchemy done with heat, they could at least accept it. But to use a battle song to increase the temperature of the godly fire was something they didn't even think about. After a while, they all fell into a state of shock. Ha ha ha, good fella. I've heard that this celestial emperor is an expert at writing battle songs. Plus, his battle songs have real effects on martial artists. Today, I didn't think it could even affect the godly fire. Amazing, truly amazing. Ji Qing laughed out loud. Not only was it because Ling Zhao's performance was so dazzling, but it was also because he was watching a good show. Originally, he wasn't very willing to go to the City of Sin. After all, the alchemy skills here were too low and he wasn't interested. But now he was glad that he came. Or else, he wouldn't have been able to witness such an exciting scene. The King of Medicine, Sun Sa's expression, however, was a little nervous and even a little jealous. Ling Zhao's alchemy with heat and his battle song were both things he couldn't do. Though he could brew a mysterious Dan and Ling Xiao couldn't, he, a mysterious alchemist, was not as good as Ling Xiao in certain aspects. This was something he couldn't accept. Ling Zhao's expression was focused on concocting pills, and the speed of his hands was so fast that his hands had almost turned into afterimages. The flame, under his control, like an obedient child without any resistance. The audience's faces finally turned from surprise. Although Dan Qing and Ji Luoyu had finished refining their pills, the audience understood that they were no match for the Sky Sea Pearl. Even if the pill was successfully refined, it would not be able to withstand the power of the heavenly Sea Pearl. Ling Zhao's rebirth made them see hope again. That's right, they had mocked Ling Xiao and looked down on him. But now they had no choice but to place their hopes on Ling Xiao, because other than Ling Xiao, there was no one else who could help them regain their face. In the sky, cheers and laughter filled the air. In the square, the cheers and applause were deafening. Everyone was in a state of ecstasy. Even though Ling Xiao hadn't succeeded, at least there was hope. Small tricks. Hearing these cheers, the Pearl of the Tian Hai coldly snickered. To be honest, Ling Zhao's alchemy with heat was something she didn't expect. Ling Zhao's alchemy with his battle song was something she didn't expect. After this young man failed to brew the Dan, he didn't seem to be affected at all. Instead, he displayed unprecedented enthusiasm and quickly found a way to turn the tables. This made her anxious. In her mind, the shadow of the King of Medicine, Sun Sa, appeared. In the past, because she lost to Medicine King Sun Sa, she chose to commit suicide, ending all troubles. Could it be that today she was going to lose again? Furthermore, he lost to such a young child. Now I really want to know who taught this guy. How can he be so outstanding? If he wasn't a match for him, I would applaud him. The Pearl of the Tian Hai sighed in her heart. But now I must beat him. I can't lose to him after losing to the King of Medicine, Sun Sa. In her cauldron, the flames were still rising. The embryonic form of the Dan had already appeared. With a little adjustment, the Dan could be completed. A bright smile appeared on her face. If the quality of the Dan was the same, as long as she was faster, she could still win the last round and become the champion. On Ling Zhao's side, the true Samadhi fire combined with the battle song made the Dan take shape faster. Originally, it was a fusion. At this time, the viscous liquid had begun to solidify, showing the shadow of the Dan. A strange medicinal fragrance began to waft out. Many people took a deep breath. For a good pill, Even if it was just the fragrance that was emitted, it would still be able to benefit one greatly. On the perfect grade 3-point origin recovery pill, there will definitely be 3 different colored patterns. This is left behind after the 3 types of Dan fused. It will depend on what grade Ling Xiao can refine. If there can't be 3 colored patterns, even if his fusion succeeds, it can't be mentioned in the same breath as the pearl of the Tianhai. Although Ji Qing bet on Ling Xiao to win, it did not mean that he had full confidence in Ling Xiao. On the contrary, he felt that this was a challenge, challenging his own vision and judgment. Whether or not Ling Xiao could succeed, he was looking forward to it very much. The first color appeared red. The second color appeared blue. The third color appeared black. Ji Qing practically stared at Ling Xiao's pill refinement process and started counting one by one. Succeeded. This boy actually really succeeded. He felt that his heart was thumping hard. Ling Xiao's performance was seriously too outstanding. Outstanding to the extent that it made him somewhat dare not believe it. What is he doing? All 3 colors already appeared, indicating that the 3-point origin recovery pill was successfully refined. What does this boy still want to do? Just as Ji Qing was endlessly excited, he discovered that not only did Ling Xiao not withdraw the Samadhi true fire, the flames became even fiercer instead, seemingly wanting to continue burning. Too arrogant, he's not trying to refine the 3-point origin recovery pill at all. Medicine King Sun Sa's hands were trembling, cold sweat flowing down his forehead. He did not think that Ling Xiao would actually do such a risky thing in order to win the pearl of the Tianhai. If it's not the 3-point origin recovery pill, then what is it? Ancestor Changle was stunned for a moment and asked, Grotto Heaven Upright Recovery Pill. Medicine King Sun Sa gritted his teeth and said, although the 2 are very similar, the 3-point origin recovery pill used by Grotto Heaven Realm is just simply fusing 3 types of high-grade, yellow-grade Dan into one, increasing the effect by roughly 20% or so. But the Grotto Heaven Upright Recovery Pill is different. It completely fuses the 3 enhancement factors into one, truly achieving unity. The medicinal effect can increase by 2 times. Of course, in terms of difficulty, the Grotto Heaven Upright Recovery Pill is absolutely higher. With his cultivation, it's too difficult. Chapter 1284. This child's potential is truly astonishing. He is only 17 years old this year, but he still refuses to give up after refining 3 portions of the energy recovery pill. He wants to refine the even more difficult Grotto Heaven Upright Pill. I'm afraid this isn't impulsiveness, but true self-confidence. From his control of flames and heat, it can be seen that his talent in alchemy is unparalleled. Even you, Sunzai, can't compare to him. Ji Qing sighed. If he can persevere on this path, then his achievements in alchemy will definitely surpass yours easily. It's very likely that he will become an influential alchemy master in the mystic world. That's too exaggerated. Although Pill King Sun Zai said so, he felt a strong sense of urgency and pressure in his heart. Although Ling Xiao was not as good as him now, if this kid was given enough time, he would definitely become very powerful. At that time, even he would not be able to be compared to him. No, this kind of guy, if I can't accept him as a disciple, I must kill him. I can't let such a powerful guy appear again. Although Pill King Sun Zai was prejudiced against Ling Xiao before, he only wanted to punish that guy. But now, after discovering Ling Xiao's outstanding talent, he felt that he really couldn't wait any longer. Once the alchemy conference ended, he would find a chance to get rid of this kid. But why does he have to refine the Heavenly Insight Pill? If he directly refined the 3 parts recovery pill, wouldn't he be able to win? Ancestor Changle suddenly asked. No, look over there. The Heavenly Sea Pearls pill has already been refined. In terms of speed, Ling Xiao can't compare to her, so he can only win in terms of quality. Ji Qing shook his head and pointed in the direction of the heavenly sea pearl. At this time, the heavenly sea pearl had already begun the final process. The flames began to gradually extinguish, and a pill slowly flew out from the furnace. In that instant, on the square, fragrance filled the air. Many plants that should not have bloomed actually bloomed at this time. It was simply a scene of 100 flowers contending with each other. Ha ha ha, kid, my pill is refined. It's the top existence among the yellow grade super pills, almost comparable to a profound grade low-level pill. Ling Xiao, what do you have to compete with me? You're bound to lose. Wild laughter came from the mouth of the Pearl of the Heavenly Sea. However, in the next second, when she saw Ling Xiao's alchemy platform, her expression changed. Of course, she also recognized the Zhang Yidan. No wonder that guy Ling Xiao didn't stop. If he wanted to refine 3 parts of the Guiyuan pill, it would take a while for it to completely take shape. In terms of speed, it definitely wouldn't be as fast as the Tianhai Pearl. When Everlasting Joy Patriarch saw this, he completely understood. From the very beginning, Ling Xiao had never thought that he would be able to win this battle just by relying on 3 portions of the Guiyuan pill. Therefore, his plan had always been to obtain the Zhang Yi pill, Heavenly Insight pill. Can Ling Xiao succeed? If he is unable to successfully refine the Heavenly Abode pill, then he will lose without a doubt. This is the true meaning of cutting off all means of retreat and fighting with his back to the river. He no longer has a way out. Ji Qing muttered to himself. It's impossible for him to succeed. With his cultivation, refining the Zhang Yi pill requires a stronger flame. However, he has already used the divine flame and even used the war song to upgrade it. Unless he has another divine flame, it might be possible if the two were to work together. But now, I don't think he has that ability. Sun Bu said coldly, the 12 divine flames are extremely precious. Having one is already lucky. How can he have 2 at the same time? Taking a step back, even if he has 2 divine flames, he won't be able to control them at the same time. The stubbornness of the divine flames isn't something that someone of his cultivation can control. Perhaps a miracle will appear. At this moment, Everlasting Joy Patriarch could only hope for a miracle. Otherwise, he really didn't know how Ling Xiao could refine the Zhang Yi pill. You can't succeed, you lunatic. The Pearl of the Heavenly Seas stared at Ling Xiao's every move. She already knew what Ling Xiao wanted to do, but she didn't think that Ling Xiao could succeed. Even if it was the current Medicine King Sun Bu, it would take a lot of effort to refine the Zhang Yi pill. What ability did Ling Xiao have to do it? Whoosh! The Pearl of the Heavenly Sea's eyes suddenly widened. A ball of flame rose from Ling Xiao's left hand, emitting a whistling sound. His right hand was a scarlet flame, while his left hand was a black-red flame. Ling Xiao actually used 2 types of flames. Dark Flame of Death. Medicine King Sun Bu lost his composure once again. How is this possible? This guy actually has 2 divine flames. How did he do it? Interesting. Ling Xiao, oh Ling Xiao, you really surprised me. Ji Qing's face was flushed red. Words couldn't describe his excitement. Humph! Let's see how you can control 2 divine flames at the same time. With your cultivation, it's utterly impossible for you to accomplish that. The Pearl of the Heavenly Seas snorted coldly, but her heart became nervous. Ling Xiao seemed to have heard the Pearl of the Heavenly Sea's voice. He smiled slightly, and a strong aura emerged from his body. The power of the Human King. Last time, he almost used the power of the 5th path of the Human King, but he didn't do it in the end. Today he had to use it in order to break through the shackles, in order to break the demon barrier that prevented Celestial Realm alchemists from refining mysterious grade pills. Boom! The terrifying aura continued to rise. At this time, Ling Xiao's body was already wrapped in the scarlet true Samadhi fire and the black-red dark flame of death. The 2 flames stretched out from his 2 arms. With the help of the power of the Human King, The two flames were like his two arms. There was no sign of discomfort at all. He actually did it. How is this possible? What is that power that suddenly appeared? The Pearl of the Heavenly Sea's mind was in a mess. At this time, she already felt that she was going to lose the competition. In her eyes, there was a gloomy killing intent. Ling Xiao, this guy is already unstoppable. At this moment, even Ancestor Changle, who didn't know much about alchemy, could see that Ling Xiao was sure to win. After 5 or 6 minutes, the two flames gradually disappeared. Ling Xiao waved his hand, and the pill that emitted a golden light was put into the cold jade bottle by him. Ha ha ha, it's a success. That kid really succeeded. Sun Zai, you didn't forget our bet, right? This time I won. Ji Qing laughed out loud. What grade of pill did he refine? Is it stronger than the Pearl of the Heavenly Sea's pill? Ji Luoyu, Dan Qing, and the other alchemists weren't that skilled, so at this moment they still couldn't judge the grade of Ling Xiao's pill. After a while, the temperature of the pill dropped to normal. Ling Xiao took out the pill and held it in his hand. At that moment, the phenomenon formed by the Pearl of the Heavenly Sea's pill was actually completely suppressed by Ling Xiao's pill. Chapter 1285. A withered tree meets spring. An iron tree blossoms. The weeds on the ground that had withered or died because of the battle also came to life. It's actually a mysterious grade pill. How is this possible? The Sky Sea Pearl thought that she would lose, but she still held on to that trace of hope. But now, the pill in Ling Xiao's hand had completely destroyed her hope. She had lost. She had completely lost. Ling Xiao had actually refined a mysterious grade pill. This was something that even she found difficult to do. A 17-year-old youth had actually done it. Was this a miracle? But why would such a miracle happen to this human? She could not accept it. Ling Xiao sat down on the white bone throne. He was tired. Too tired. He had never been so tired before. Even when he was chasing Tomohiko Kuma all night in the northern desert, he had never been so tired. A mysterious grade pill. He had really refined it, successfully. Even he himself was somewhat surprised. His perseverance had paid off. Although he had relied on the power of the human king and 2 divine fires, those were all his own strength. He had won fair and square. The outcome had already been revealed. There was no suspense as to who the champion would belong to. On the judging panel, Ji Qing and Ancestor Changle were laughing very happily. Medicine King's son saw his face was somewhat stiff. I'll kill you. Suddenly, the Sky Sea Pearl approached Ling Xiao at an extremely fast speed. Her eyes revealed incomparable hatred. She wanted to kill this youth, this person who obstructed her from realizing her plan. The corners of Ling Xiao's mouth curled into a cold smile. It seemed that he had long expected all of this. Failure was unacceptable to the Sky Sea Pearl. Therefore, she would definitely do some irrational things after losing. And Ling Xiao was waiting for this opportunity. He wanted to throw out a hot potato. These few days he had not been idle. Besides preparing for the alchemy conference, he had also used the Mountain River martial spirit to perfectly duplicate the Imperial Jade Seal. He believed that unless someone had truly come into contact with the Imperial Jade Seal, they would absolutely not be able to distinguish the authenticity of these 2 items. The instant the Sky Sea Pearl pounced over, he suddenly reached out and threw out the Imperial Jade Seal. The Imperial Jade Seal was a magic treasure. Against the wind, it suddenly enlarged and smashed viciously towards the Heavenly Sea Pearl. Ha ha ha, idiot, the Imperial Jade Seal is mine. When the Tian Hai Pearl saw the Imperial Ruler's seal, she changed her attack on Ling Xiao. Instead, she tried her best to rank above the fake Imperial Ruler's seal. Fakes were fakes. Although they could grow bigger, they weren't that powerful. With a single strike from the Heavenly Sea Pearl, the Imperial Jade Seal fell from the sky. She grabbed it in her hand and shot through the air. Things were developing too quickly. Many people were unable to react in time. This included the experts on the judging panel. When Ji Qing broke through the air in an attempt to stop the Heavenly Sea Pearl, an elite cultivator charged out from the darkness and exchanged a palm strike with him, protecting the Heavenly Sea Pearl as they disappeared. Ji Qing landed, looked at his palm, and sneered. I didn't expect the Water Spirit Temple to send one of the two protectors, Protector Zhongshui, to protect this merfolk girl. I really miscalculated. That was the Imperial Jade Seal, right? Patriarch Chengel asked Ling Xiao anxiously. Hateful. I didn't expect her to sneak attack me. Ling Xiao's face was naturally filled with resentment and helplessness. The Moon Maiden had already pretended to chase after them. Even if it was an act, she had to go through with it. The Moon Maiden couldn't be too calm, otherwise others wouldn't believe her. Shameless merfolk. Shameless Water Spirit Temple. Do those guys from the Water Spirit Temple also want to establish themselves on the continent? Why did they snatch the Imperial Jade Seal, passed down by our human king? Ling Xiao knew that his plan had succeeded. The Mountain River Martial Spirit's replica looked no different from the real thing. Even if there was a flaw in his act, the item was in the hands of the Water Spirit Temple. Medicine King's son saw, Ji Qing, Patriarch Changel, and the others had all seen this. In the future, he would let the Water Spirit Temple take the hot potato. He only needed to take the real Imperial Jade Seal back to the Heavenly Dragon Continent, set up the nation guarding array, and find the dead man's note inside. Perhaps after a long time, someone would discover that it was a replica. But at that time, Ling Xiao believed that his strength would be even stronger, and his ability to protect himself would also be stronger. Chase. There were people in the audience and VIP seats who left the square to chase after the Heavenly Sea Pearl. To them, although the champion of the Alchemy Conference was worth paying attention to, the Imperial Jade Seal was more worth fighting for. Patriarch Changel, Ji Qing, and Medicine King's son also sent their subordinates to chase. The Alchemy Conference had reached its final stage. These people who cared about face naturally couldn't openly chase after the Imperial Jade Seal. Even if they were anxious, they could only wait for the results to be announced. Since the Heavenly Sea Pearl had already left, the judges appraised the works of the pharmacists who stayed behind. In the end, Patriarch Changel announced the results. This alchemy conference has come to a successful end. The champion of the conference is the Celestial Emperor, Ling Xiao. Following his announcement, countless applause and cheers surged wildly. Many people in the audience cheered at the top of their lungs, congratulating Ling Xiao from the bottom of their hearts. For a time, the entire Changel Square became a sea of revelry. No wonder they were so excited. After all, the process of this alchemy conference was really too tortuous. The appearance of the sea race's Heavenly Sea Pearl stirred the hearts of everyone present. The Heavenly Sea Pearl's arrogant provocation made them furious. However, they didn't have the ability to fight back. They could only watch as the other party spoke rudely. Finally, at this moment, the young Ling Xiao appeared out of nowhere. He was like a dazzling star, completely crushing the arrogant Heavenly Sea Pearl. The first round, the second round, the third round, he won all of them. He didn't leave any face for the sea race. So much so that the Heavenly Sea Pearl was enraged in the end. She actually wanted to kill Ling Xiao and seize the opportunity to snatch the Imperial Jade Seal. People sympathized with Ling Xiao and were grateful to Ling Xiao. Therefore, at this moment, their cheers were mixed with too many emotions. Of course, in a sense, the appearance of the Heavenly Sea Pearl had actually made Ling Xiao successful. If not for her appearance, this would probably be an internal conflict between the land races. Even if Ling Xiao defeated Dan Qing and Jiluoyu, it wouldn't have caused such a huge reaction. However, the Heavenly Sea Pearl was different. She had the ability to crush those pharmacists, including Dan Qing and Jiluoyu. Only Ling Xiao had the ability to turn the tide. It was he who saved the honor of the land races. It was he who defended the dignity of the land races. The significance of this was obviously different. Moreover, under the pressure of the heavenly sea pearl's powerful strength. Ling Xiao had no choice but to choose to take the risk. In the end, he broke through the shackles and refined a mysterious great elixir with his celestial realm cultivation. Ha ha ha, sun's on. Let's not talk about the Imperial Jade Seal for now. Today, Ling Xiao has really given me a big surprise. Also, don't forget about the bet between the two of us. Ji Qing laughed. Chapter 1286. Don't worry, I won't go back on my word. Once you've thought of what pill you want me to refine, come and find me. Right now, I'm going to chase after the Imperial Jade Seal. That thing definitely can't fall into the hands of the Sea Clan. Medicine King's son originally wanted to wait until after the alchemy conference to kill Ling Xiao. However, at this moment, there was something even better that attracted him, so he naturally wouldn't stay. Divine Phoenix Empire's Frost General Xiao Ji, Jade Ripple Island's Corpse Granny, and exiled Zhang Tianda, and the others were also anxious. Killing Ling Xiao was important, but how could it be compared to the Imperial Jade Seal? Of course, there were also people who disdained the Imperial Jade Seal. For example, little Medicine King Ji Luoyu. Ling Xiao, you brat, you're too awesome. Ji Luoyu came over and fiercely smashed Ling Xiao's chest, then laughed loudly. This girl wasn't as tall as Ling Xiao, so she actually stood on her tiptoes, which made her look somewhat comical. However, her actions made Ling Xiao have a good impression of her. Compared to the hypocritical Medicine King Sun Sa, his disciple Jiluoyu was a straightforward and sincere little girl. I've said it before, the champion is mine. Ling Xiao wasn't modest. In this matter, he had enough reason to be proud, because in this alchemy conference, even he himself was surprised by his performance. That's right. At first, I didn't believe you, but after seeing your godly alchemy skills, I admire you so much that I prostrate myself before you. Ji Luoyu said with a smile. Dan Qing obviously wasn't as free and easy as Ji Luoyu. His expression was somewhat ugly. When the Pearl of the Heavenly Seas was here, he could vent his hostility and hatred on that Sea Clan woman. However, after the Pearl of the Heavenly Seas left, the only target he was unhappy with was Ling Xiao alone. Although he was shocked by Ling Xiao, he was unwilling to accept it no matter what. Ling Xiao, remember this. My cultivation is stronger than yours, so the pills I can refine will definitely be better than yours. This time you are lucky. Just wait. I will soon break through the rank of profound level alchemist. At that time, I will let you know how powerful I am. Even though he had lost so badly that he didn't even have his underwear left, Dan Qing still refused to admit defeat. This wasn't an admirable character. When a person was so arrogant that he forgot to be humble, then he was not far from being finished. Even someone as arrogant as Ling Xiao would act humble and low-key in front of some people. When it was time to admit defeat, he didn't know how to act tough. Let me give you a word of advice. Out of 3 people, there is always one who can learn from me. Don't think too highly of yourself. Otherwise, let alone the next time, you'll never be able to reach my level, let alone surpass me. Ling Xiao looked at Dan Qing with disdain. He couldn't be bothered to make friends with this kind of person. Although the cheers were still echoing, Ling Xiao didn't have the mood to stay. He didn't like crowds. He went to the Changle Patriarch to receive the rewards for this time's championship, the Moonstone and other things. Of course, the Moonstone was the most important thing. This was for the Moon Maiden. However, Ling Xiao didn't get any benefits. He could consume the Heavenly Abode elixir that he had refined using the materials given by the Changle Celestial Island. The Heavenly Abode elixir was originally for Heavenly Abode realm martialists. However, Ling Xiao's physique was different from that of ordinary people. In addition, he had the mountain river martial soul. There wouldn't be any problem for him to consume it directly. After returning to Yun Ye's residence, Ling Xiao and the Moon Maiden chose to go into seclusion. This time, I must use this Heavenly Abode elixir to break through to the half-step Heavenly Abode realm. Ling Xiao held the elixir in his hand, took a deep breath, and made up his mind. Although he had obtained a great victory in this alchemy conference, the flaw in his cultivation had caused him to be restrained in every way. This was something that he was extremely unhappy about. Qi. Within his body, the power of the Scarlet Sun began to fight against the heavenly abode elixir. This battle was a continuous, high-intensity collision. It seemed as if a storm was brewing in the mountain river realm. However, with every collision, a mellow power would surge out of the heavenly abode elixir and enter Ling Xiao's body frantically. When it collided with his soul, meridians, and body, Ling Xiao felt as if his body was about to split apart. This kind of pain was something that he had to endure. After all, the heavenly abode elixir wasn't something that a person of his cultivation level should use. Since he wanted to use it, he had to pay a price. Ling Xiao endured the pain as he activated the true Samadhi fire and the dark flames of death. Together with the power of the Scarlet Sun, he suppressed the heavenly abode elixir. Even more energy was released from it and rushed through Ling Xiao's body like a stampede of horses. About 2 days had passed. Ling Xiao hadn't drunk a single drop of water, but his body didn't show any signs of fatigue or tiredness. The heavenly abode elixir's medicinal effects were too strong. The physical strength and energy he had expended were replenished in an instant. In these 2 days, relying on the 2 divine fires and the power of the Scarlet Sun, he had completely melted the heavenly abode elixir. However, melting the elixir was only the first step. The violent medicinal power was rampaging through his body, and it was very likely that it would be dangerous. Good heavens, it's really worthy of being called a mysterious grade elixir. Although it's only the lowest mysterious grade low level and isn't perfect, the medicinal effects are already so strong. If it weren't for my special physique, I'm afraid I would have exploded. Ling Xiao lamented in his heart, but at the same time he was also ecstatic. He calculated that his cultivation level should be able to steadily advance to the half-step heavenly abode realm after these powers were completely merged with him. It had only been 2 days, and he was already at the pinnacle of the 10 directions heaven. However, only a small part of the heavenly abode elixir's energy had been merged. Although it would be more difficult to advance beyond the level, he believed that the remaining power would be enough. Thinking of this, Ling Xiao released his soul power and began to control and guide the fierce power into his 9 cauldrons' heavenly veins, and began to form a heavenly abode. Transforming the heavenly veins into a heavenly abode was another great improvement. However, it wasn't something that every martial artist could do. Countless martial artists could only stay at the sky human realm for their entire lives. They couldn't even enter the half-step heavenly abode realm, let alone the heavenly abode realm. Ling Xiao had released the sword realm before, so he treated it as his first heavenly abode realm. After all, with experience, it would be easier to condense. Time continued to pass. However, Ling Xiao's heart was as firm as a rock. No matter how fierce the power in his body was, it wasn't a problem under the combination of his tenacious will and strong soul power. He had already suffered a lot in his life, so this time it was nothing to him at all. Although he felt like his body was being torn apart in the process of removing the heavenly veins and condensing the sword realm, there were a few times when he almost chose to give up. However, in the end, he gritted his teeth and persevered. Chapter 1287. Another 7 days passed, and Ling Xiao's body underwent earth-shattering changes. The originally violent medicinal energy was almost completely absorbed, and where his vein of the heavens was, a blinding ball of energy appeared. This ball of energy was the core of the heavenly abode domain. Through the ball of energy, one could see that inside the heavenly abode domain, other than a large amount of sharp sword energy, there were also 9 giant bronze cauldrons. 9 cauldrons, sword domain. Ling Xiao suddenly opened his eyes. The ball of energy flashed and formed a sword domain that was several meters wide. However, this sword domain was not very similar to the one he used before. The one before only had sword energy and only had attack. But now it had the blessing of the 9 cauldrons. It had powerful defensive abilities and a special suppressive effect. At this moment, he had successfully broken through the shackles of the 10 directions heaven realm and successfully entered the embryonic stage of the half-step heavenly abode realm. After breaking through to the embryonic stage of the half-step heavenly abode realm, Ling Xiao spent almost half a month to stabilize his cultivation. When he came out, the city of Sin had been turned upside down. Because of the imperial ruler's seal, this place had become the focus of all the major forces. Ling Xiao was actually a little glad that he found a scapegoat and gave the fake imperial ruler's seal to the Sky Sea Pearl. Otherwise, the Moon Maiden and the others would have died of exhaustion. Even if they could protect him, they would have been covered in wounds. That choice was very wise. When Ling Xiao came out, the Moon Maiden was still in seclusion. He found Cold Plum and asked about the recent situation in the City of Sin. Master, the City of Sin is in a mess right now. The Emerald Ripple Island, the Divine Phoenix Empire, the Black Crow Empire, and many other small countries have sent their elites. What's most shocking is that the 5 Immortal Islands, the Everlasting Joy Immortal Island, the Blackwater Immortal Island, the Black Crystal Immortal Island, the Unsullied Immortal Island, and the Green Jade Immortal Island have all sent their elites. In addition to the people who stayed here before, it's simply chaotic. Cold Plum replied, and the most troublesome thing right now is that the City of Sin can only be entered but not exited. It's completely surrounded. 2 days ago, I heard that the Pearl of the Sky Seas and the Water God Shrines experts appeared. It seems like they're also in hiding right now, unable to leave. Tisk, TSK. I didn't expect the Imperial Jade Seal to be so powerful. Luckily, I made a decision early on. Otherwise, it would be really troublesome. I guess the Heavenly Sea Pearl is regretting it now. Ling Xiao said with a playful smile. If she regrets it, she should hand over the Imperial Ruler's seal. The reason why she hasn't handed it over now is definitely because she's hoping for a fluke. After all, that thing is too precious. Regardless of whether it's its symbolic meaning or the human king's notes hidden within it, it has a fatal attraction. At some point, Princess Yunya also appeared and said with a smile, "You didn't look for him?" Ling Xiao asked with a smile. "I'm not interested in that thing because it can kill people." Princess Yunya shook her head. It was impossible to say that she wasn't interested in it at all. However, this woman was really smart and honest. Now the City of Sin was in turmoil. With so many experts gathered here, even the alchemy conference wasn't as sensational. If she jumped out, wouldn't she be looking for death? Haha, you're smart. Ling Xiao smiled, and then he stood up and said, Lung Mei, let's go take a look outside and observe the situation first. Now that I've come out of closed-door cultivation, I reckon Sister Moon Maiden will come out of closed-door cultivation soon as well. We can't just stay here forever, right? Yes, Master. The two said goodbye to Yunya and stepped out of the mansion. At the same time, in an abandoned temple at the edge of the City of Sin, the Pearl of the Sky Seas was panting heavily. There were many injuries on her body, and her face was extremely gloomy. Beside her, there was a powerful cultivator. It was Protector Zhongshui, who had been sent by the Water God Shrine to protect her. This person was a Yin-Yang realm cultivator, but he had been chased to the point where he had to hide everywhere. He had also suffered many injuries. The two of them hid here and were still in a constant state of anxiety. We can't go on like this. We have to find out the secret of the Imperial Jade Seal as soon as possible, or find a way to leave the City of Sin. Or else, even I will be chased to death. Protector Zhongshui frowned. He was not in a good mood. Back then, when the Pearl of the Sky Seas took the Imperial Jade Seal from Ling Xiao, he was quite happy. He felt that even though he couldn't kill Ling Xiao this time, getting the Imperial Jade Seal was still a great achievement. When he returned, he would definitely be rewarded. But what happened next gave him and the Pearl of the Sky Seas a headache. First, they were chased by the Moon Maiden, who forced them to leave the City of Sin. Then, they became rats that everyone wanted to kill. The entire city of Sin was surrounded by forces from all directions, especially since the alchemy conference had attracted too many experts. They formed an effective blockade in a short period of time, including the King of Medicine, Sun Sa, Ji Qing, and Elder Chang Lu. None of them were easy to deal with. In order to avoid these people's attacks, he and the Pearl of the Sky Seas were covered in injuries. Someone's coming. Just as he was studying the Imperial Jade Seal, he suddenly heard rustling footsteps from outside. It seemed that more than 10 people were walking in this direction. At the same time, he heard voices. There's a rundown temple here. There's a strong smell of blood. I wonder if the Pearl of the Sky Seas is hiding in there. Let's go in and take a look. The one who spoke was Green Wave Island's corpse granny, but Vice Island Master, the Pearl of the Sky Seas, has protector Zhongshui by her side. I'm afraid we're not her match. Let's wait for the island master to come. A slightly worried voice spoke. Nonsense. That protector Zhongshui is already heavily injured. So what if he's a Yin-Yang realm expert? With me here, what are you afraid of? Let's go in. The corpse granny was very domineering. Moreover, she was determined to obtain the Imperial Jade Seal. She didn't want the island master of Green Wave Island to obtain it, so she definitely wouldn't ask for help. Moreover, she had personally seen Protector Zhongshui being injured. A Yin-Yang realm expert was indeed powerful, but if he was injured, she could still take advantage of him. In the rundown temple, Protector Zhongshui revealed a sinister smile and indicated for the Pearl of the Sky Seas not to move. Since these people wanted to court death, he didn't mind venting his anger. He had had enough of hiding from place to place. He needed to find someone to vent his anger. The corpse granny and a dozen people from Green Wave Island entered the rundown temple. At this moment, Protector Zhongshui actually pretended to be heavily injured. He looked fiercely at the corpse granny and roared, "Today, even if I fall in your hands, I'll drag you down with me." He was indeed injured. Therefore, a frontal attack might not be able to kill the corpse granny, a peak Grotto Heaven realm expert. Therefore, he pretended to be heavily injured and lured the corpse granny in front of him. Then he would launch a sneak attack. This way, the efficiency would be higher. Chapter 1288. Hee, Protector Zhongshui of the Water God Temple, I didn't expect you to have such a day. Quickly hand over the Imperial Jade Seal, and I can spare your life out of kindness. Corpse Granny was extremely cautious and cunning. Although she had entered the temple, she didn't approach Protector Zhongshui. She had been standing in the best position to escape. I don't have the Imperial Jade Seal, but I do have your life. If you dare to touch me today, you will become an enemy of the Water God Temple. Even the Emerald Wave Island can't protect you. Protector Zhongshui said coldly, "Idiot, once I get the Imperial Jade Seal, I will naturally escape. As long as you are all dead, who will know that I have it?" Corpse Granny sneered. Then she looked at the disciples of the Emerald Wave Island and said, "Go and take their storage rings." The disciples of the Emerald Wave Island were not stupid and didn't want to die. But the problem was that Corpse Granny was ruthless. Black gas was released from her body and instantly rushed into the bodies of those disciples. Those people staggered as if they had lost their souls. They walked toward Protector Zhongshui and the Sky Sea Pearl like walking corpses. Damn, what a cunning old woman. Protector Zhongshui had pretended to be seriously injured in an attempt to sneak attack Corpse Granny. Now that he saw the situation, he couldn't pretend anymore. His face turned cold. Suddenly, several streams of water were released from his body, like ropes. The pitiful disciples of the Emerald Wave Island were pierced by the seemingly weak streams of water and died on the spot. "Old thing, you are not seriously injured." Corpse Granny frowned. She wanted to leave, but she was reluctant. Although the disciples of the Emerald Wave Island were killed, those disciples were only in the Heaven Realm. She was a top powerhouse in the Grotto Heaven Realm. She might not be afraid of Protector Zhong Shui. After a moment of hesitation, the disciples of the Emerald Wave Island turned into water and were sucked into Protector Zhong Shui's body. Ha ha ha, it's really a great tonic. Protector Zhong Shui laughed heartily. The disciples of Jade Wave Island mostly had the gentle water attribute. Once he absorbed it, he would feel pretty good. Only then did Corpse Granny realize that something was wrong. She leaped and fled, but Protector Zhong Shui slammed her into the wall and was seriously injured on the spot. Old thing, don't you want the Imperial Jade Seal? Why are you in a hurry to leave? Protector Zhong Shui stood up and walked towards Corpse Granny. However, at this moment, a shout suddenly sounded from outside. Protector Zhong Shui, hand over the Imperial Jade Seal, and I'll spare your life. Damn it, this sun saw is really haunting me. When Protector Zhong Shui heard this voice, his expression immediately changed. He grabbed the Heavenly Sea Pearl and fled out of the dilapidated temple. There weren't many people he was afraid of in the City of Sin, but the Medicine King's son Sa was one of them. That guy was too hard to deal with. Phew! Hearing that Medicine King's son Sa had chased after Protector Zhong Shui, Corpse Granny let out a sigh of relief. She hurriedly sat down cross-legged and prepared to heal her injuries. At this moment, footsteps could be heard from outside the temple. A man and a woman came in. Vice Island Master. When the two of them saw Corpse Granny, they were shocked. When Corpse Granny saw the two of them, her face lit up with joy as she said, "So it's you too." They were the disciples of Emerald Wave Island. One of them was the famous rose Sword Situ Hongyan. Although the other person wasn't very famous, she was still one of the top 5 talents of Emerald Wave Island. I was ambushed by a thief just now. I'm seriously injured. Come over and help me heal. Corpse Granny looked at the two of them and said. Situ Hongyan hesitated for a moment and didn't go over. The other person didn't hesitate to go over and try to help. However, at this moment, a black energy spurted out from Corpse Granny's mouth and enveloped the Emerald Wave Island disciple. After a moment, that person's body shriveled up like a mummy. Situ Hongyan's expression suddenly changed. Vice Island Master, what are you doing? What am I doing? Can't you see? If you don't want to end up like him, go out and get me a few living people. It's best if they're Grotto Heaven realm martial artists. If not, half-step Grotto Heaven realm martial artists will do. Corpse Granny sneered. At this moment, she was seriously injured and Situ Hongyan was far away. It was really difficult to attack Situ Hongyan, so she had to think of another way. Situ Hongyan was just about to speak when a noise came from outside the ruined temple. Hee, your luck is not bad, little girl. 2 fat lambs have delivered themselves to our doorstep. Stand to the side and help me sneak attack them. Corpse Granny reminded. Disciple obeys. Although Situ Hongyan didn't like Corpse Granny's behavior, she didn't care if Corpse Granny killed other martial artists, as long as it wasn't an Emerald Wave Island martial artist. At the thought of this, she quickly hid behind the door and screamed, "Help!" Outside the door, Ling Xiao and Cold Plum had just arrived. They followed the smell of blood and suddenly heard the cry for help. They looked at each other and didn't move. Master, I'm afraid there's a trap. Well, but we have to go in and take a look. I just saw Corpse Granny enter the ruined temple. This guy has been thinking about killing me. If there's a chance, let's get rid of her first. Ling Xiao nodded and a sneer appeared on his face. Others thought he knew nothing about the situation in the ruined temple, but he saw it clearly. As he spoke, he had already stepped into the ruined temple. As soon as he entered, a cold light flashed from behind the door and attacked his neck. However, this person didn't seem to want to kill him, but to hold him hostage. So Ling Xiao didn't do anything and let the other party put a long sword on his neck. He wanted to see what the situation was first, and then proceed to the next step of the plan. The person who attacked him wasn't very strong. They were both half-step Grotto Heaven realm, but they were only at the mature stage. He. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. I was wondering who it was. It turned out to be you and the little girl beside you. Corpse Granny showed a proud smile. She knew that cold plum beside Ling Xiao wasn't easy to deal with. However, Ling Xiao was held hostage by Situ Hongyan, so the other party would be cautious. Of course, she was proud. Corpse Granny? What do you want? The Imperial Jade Seal is no longer in my hands. Ling Xiao asked with a frown. Are you afraid? Although the Imperial Jade Seal is no longer in your hands, the enmity between you and our Greenwave Island has yet to be resolved. You have killed so many people from Greenwave Island, and you want to let it go so easily? Corpse Granny sneered. You want revenge? Then you should have said so earlier. I'm afraid you can't kill me. Although Ling Xiao was held hostage, he was very calm. This made Corpse Granny and Situ Hongyan frown. Let me give you a piece of advice. Those people who died in Jade Wave Island deserved it. Don't think about revenge. Otherwise, I will make your Jade Wave Island completely disappear from the Divine Phoenix continent. Ling Xiao said coldly. The current Ling Xiao was fully qualified to say such words. He represented not only himself, but the huge heavenly empire. Chapter 1289. Who are you trying to scare? Do you think you're great just because you won the alchemy conference? Bah! So what if I kill you today? Although the Moon Lady is powerful, it's not that easy to catch up with me. Corpse Grandma said disdainfully. You can try. I sincerely hope you don't be stupid. Ling Xiao said with a smile. Hongyan, what are you waiting for? Corpse Grandma ordered. But Vice Island Master, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. The Island Master also warned us not to make enemies with Ling Xiao for the time being. Situ Hongyan hesitated. Idiot, he just killed your senior brother. Didn't you see it? And he used an extremely cruel, evil technique. If this guy doesn't die, you will. Corpse Grandma said coldly. Hey, I haven't even seen the senior brother, and you want to blame his life on me? Ling Xiao said helplessly. Humph. Anyway, aren't you not afraid of our Emerald Wave Island? You've already killed so many people. What's one more life? Corpse Grandma snorted. I killed him. I won't deny it. But if anyone wants to make me a scapegoat, that's impossible. Ling Xiao shook his head and said, clearly, it doesn't matter if you admit it or not. I was healing here, and the two of them were guarding me. In the end, one of them was killed by your evil technique. Fortunately, Hongyan was clever and didn't get killed. This is the truth. Corpse Grandma said shamelessly. Situ Hongyan didn't say anything, but she felt her face burning. Naturally, not everyone in Emerald Wave Island was shameless. For example, although Situ Hongyan didn't know Ling Xiao, she didn't care if Ling Xiao was killed. However, Corpse Grandma killed someone herself, but she wanted to blame this person. She suddenly felt that her Vice Island Master was really shameless. Situ Hongyan, don't you want to avenge your senior brother? Don't tell me you want to watch the person who killed your senior brother be so proud of himself? Corpse Grandma said coldly. Could it be that you intend to collude with him and wallow in the mire with him? TSK. Today, I've finally witnessed the shamelessness of the Deputy Island Master of Emerald Ripple Island. Not only did he cheat outsiders, he even cheated his own people. Ling Xiao clicked his tongue and sighed. Situ Hongyan, you have to think clearly. You have a great future in Emerald Wave Island. Do you want to ruin your future for an outsider? Corpse Grandma's voice turned cold. Situ Hongyan looked at Ling Xiao with cold killing intent in her eyes. In the end, she still did not want to become the enemy of Jade Wave Island for an outsider. After all, she knew that the Corpse Granny had too much authority on Jade Ripple Island. So what if she misrepresented a deer and distorted the truth? In any case, there were still people willing to listen to her. This was the terrifying reality. You really want to kill me? Ling Xiao asked. You killed my senior brother, and you want to kill me. Why can't I kill you? Situ Hongyan became cold. He well said, as expected of a disciple of my Emerald Wave Island. Corpse Grandma laughed. Sigh, after all the choices, you actually chose the stupidest path. Ling Xiao sighed. You don't have the right to say that. Today, I want to see how strong Ling Xiao, who is known as the Devil of Sin City, is. Situ Hongyan suddenly pulled her sword, trying to tear Ling Xiao's throat open. However, when the sword in her hand moved, Ling Xiao's body had already disappeared. When he reappeared, he was more than 10 meters away. What? Situ Hongyan was stunned for a moment and muttered to herself, I am the Rose Sword of Emerald Wave Island. I'm ranked second only to Emerald Wave Sword Mo Kong. Even the 10 great phoenixes of the Divine Phoenix Empire and the 7 demons of the Black Crow Empire dare not underestimate me. Your movement technique is good, but you are still not my opponent. Kill yourself. Kill myself? Ling Xiao was stunned for a moment and had the urge to laugh. This Situ Hongyan was not weak. She was much weaker than the one who was ranked last among the 10 great phoenixes. Was she ignorant? Or was she simply too conceited? Thinking about that Mo Xiaoyu, he was also like this. It seemed that the martial artists on this island were not good enough. Their vision was too narrow, and they did not know how terrifying the outside world was. What? You don't want to? Situ Hongyan said coldly. This woman was obviously not pretending. She really thought that she was much stronger than Ling Xiao. Even the aura she exuded was high and mighty. Of course I don't want to. Ling Xiao smiled. His feet trembled slightly, and his figure disappeared again. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Corpse Grandma. He disdained to fight with Situ Hongyan because she was no match for him. Brat, you are courting death. Corpse Grandma was shocked. She never expected that Ling Xiao would dare to attack her in such a situation. But an expert was an expert after all. In an instant, the crutch in her hand blasted out. Black smoke filled the air, and countless black skeleton shadows flew out. Which one was real and which one was fake? It was difficult for ordinary martial artists to judge. However, her trick was not worth mentioning in front of Ling Xiao. The sword in his hand flashed. The shadow sword suddenly stabbed out. Chi, chi, little beast! Corpse Grandma retreated quickly. There was no other way. After being seriously injured, the power of her attack was sharply reduced. She could not even block Ling Xiao's sword. Although she avoided the attack, her right hand holding the crutch had been invaded by Ling Xiao's sword chi. Although her arm was not crippled, the crutch fell to the ground. Hiding more than 10 meters away, Corpse Grandma's face was gloomy to the extreme. She was clearly a top powerhouse in the Grotto Heaven realm, but facing a mere Ling Xiao, she was so passive. This made her very unhappy. Ling Xiao, this guy, was ruthless. He hit her weakness with one move, making her completely unable to resist. At this time, Situ Hongyan was already standing in front of Corpse Grandma, trying to block Ling Xiao's pursuit. However, Ling Xiao did not pursue. Instead, he showed a disdainful smile and said, Situ Hongyan, right? Your arrogance is useless. I can stab Corpse Grandma in front of you. I can even kill her in front of you, and you can't do anything. Situ Hongyan did not say anything. Since leaving the island, this was the first time she was lectured by someone younger than her. However, she had nothing to say. Ling Xiao's attack was not only strange, but also powerful. She knew that she could not block it, as expected of the Celestial Emperor, the devil of the City of Sin. It seems that the rumors outside are true. You are indeed much more powerful than I thought. Situ Hongyan finally opened her mouth, but it was sincere praise. You are exaggerating. I am just a very ordinary person. Ling Xiao said lightly. Ordinary person? Situ Hongyan smiled bitterly in her heart. If you are an ordinary person, then what am I? Am I not even an ordinary person? How about it? After seeing my ability, do you still want to help that old witch? Ling Xiao asked with a smile. Chapter 1290. Ling Xiao had a good impression of Situ Hongyan, so he didn't want to kill her. But if this woman was stubborn, then he didn't plan to hold back. Since others were courting death, if he didn't let her die, wouldn't he be letting her down? I won't make a move. Situ Hongyan was very wise. Of course, don't misunderstand. I'm not afraid of you. I just feel that it's not worth it to make a move for that old witch. These were her heartfelt words. If the corpse granny was a great person, then even if she knew that she was no match for him, she would still fight with Ling Xiao. Even if she died in battle, she would be willing to do so. But this was not the case. The corpse granny was despicable and shameless to the extreme. She couldn't even think of making a move for this person. That's a smart choice. You can leave now, but she can't leave. Ling Xiao could let Situ Hongyan go because they wouldn't become enemies. But the corpse granny was different. With such a good opportunity to kill the corpse granny, he would never give it up. Ling Xiao, you just said that it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. This old woman knows that she was wrong and shouldn't have framed you. This old woman intends to repent and never find trouble with you in the future. Can you let this old woman leave? At this moment, the corpse granny suddenly said. Blood was still flowing on her arm, but the smile on her face was full of flattery. This woman actually knew how to beg others. You know that you were wrong? Ha ha ha! I didn't expect you old witch to know that you were wrong. Do you really think I'm a 3-year-old child? If you weren't seriously injured, if Situ Hongyan didn't choose to leave, would you be so obedient as to beg for mercy? Ling Xiao sneered disdainfully. Are you thinking that when your injuries are healed, you must kill me so that others won't see your ugly appearance today? Situ Hongyan looked at Ling Xiao with a bit of admiration in her eyes. She also wanted to be like Ling Xiao, who didn't fear power and could openly scold a shameless person like the corpse granny. Unfortunately, she wasn't Ling Xiao after all, and she really couldn't do that. How could that be? Corpse granny didn't want to admit it, but her thoughts were exactly as Ling Xiao thought. Today, she had lowered her head because she was seriously injured and could not defeat Ling Xiao. However, once her injuries were healed, she would definitely not let Ling Xiao go. This was her truest thought. Why bother, corpse granny? You were so mighty just now, but now you're lowering your voice. Don't you feel ashamed? Ling Xiao smiled and said, You hate me so much that you want to kill me. I also want to kill you. Why don't we fight fair and square? You may not lose to me. Ling Xiao, whatever you want, as long as I can get it, I'll give it to you. Including Situ Hongyan, I think you have some ideas about her. Moreover, after you have her, you can play with her as you wish and you won't have to bear any responsibility. How about that? Corpse granny took another step back. The smile on her face was very ugly, and the words coming out of her mouth were even more unpleasant. At this time, she didn't dare to fight with Ling Xiao, not to mention that Cold Plum was beside Ling Xiao. Even at her peak, she couldn't defeat Cold Plum, not to mention that she was seriously injured now. Therefore, no matter how shameless she was, she had to survive. She had to save her own life first, and nothing else mattered. Corpse granny, although I, Situ Hongyan, am a disciple of Emerald Ripple Island, I'm not your tool. I can't serve whoever you want me to. If you say that again, I'll kill you. Situ Hongyan was so angry that her face flushed red and her breathing became rapid. She wasn't humiliated by the legendary devil, but she was humiliated by her own people. This made her feel very painful and sad. You old thing, you're really hopeless. Even if we didn't have a grudge, I must kill you today. Ling Xiao's sword intent broke through the air, and his voice was filled with extremely strong killing intent. As long as this corpse granny was alive, she was simply a scourge. Who knew how many innocent people would be killed by her? Kill me? Are you willing to do that? Just as Ling Xiao was about to make his move, Two skeletal hands suddenly stretched out from the ground and grabbed Situ Hongyan, pulling her towards Corpse Granny. Situ Hongyan, if you don't want to save me, I can only use you as a shield. Corpse Granny revealed a ferocious smile and then looked at Ling Xiao and said, Do you feel bad? It's useless to feel bad. Let me tell you, if you don't let me go today, then I'll kill this delicate flower. Ling Xiao couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Is there something wrong with this person's head? Something wrong with your head? Situ Hongyan is a disciple of Emerald Ripple Island. You're using her to threaten me? Did I hear it wrong, or did you say it wrong? After a moment, he couldn't help but ask with a smile. Situ Hongyan was not surprised, but she was a little regretful. The reason why she was not surprised was that she already knew Corpse Granny's character. It was not surprising that she would do such a thing. The reason why she regretted it was that she was too careless. She had been wary of this old thing before, but because she wanted to protect this old thing, she was too close to her and had no chance to avoid it. She never thought that Ling Xiao would save her. As Ling Xiao said, she was a disciple of Emerald Ripple Island. Ling Xiao had nothing to do with her. Why would he save her and let a big enemy go because of this? Was this worth it? No matter how she thought about it, this deal was not worth it. But she still had a glimmer of fantasy. She heard that Ling Xiao had many confidants around him, and they were all dead set on Ling Xiao. Not because of anything else, but because Ling Xiao was willing to face powerful enemies for these women, and he would never back down. As the saying goes, beauties love heroes. Situ Hongyan was no exception. Even if she did not think that Ling Xiao would like her, she was still looking forward to Ling Xiao helping her because she was a woman. Of course, this was just a glimmer of expectation. This expectation was a little illusory, a little ethereal and too unreal. She is a disciple of our Emerald Ripple Island, but such a delicate flower. Are you really willing to watch her die in the hands of a shameless person like me? Corpse Granny sneered. She actually admitted that she was shameless, which was worthy of praise. As she spoke, the black gas released from her body had wrapped around Situ Hongyan. Situ Hongyan's blood and heavenly elemental energy could be seen flowing into Corpse Granny's body along with the black gas. This old thing cultivated immemorial witchcraft. It was unknown how evil it was, whether she withered or not. What does it have to do with me? Ling Xiao still said the same sentence, and then, without any intention of stopping, the shadow sword in his hand stabbed straight at Corpse Granny. Even if Situ Hongyan was in front of Corpse Granny, at this moment, Situ Hongyan was a little disappointed. But she did not hate Ling Xiao. She was even a little grateful to Ling Xiao. Dying under Ling Xiao's sword was better than dying under Corpse Granny's witchcraft. Chapter 1291. Situ Hongyan closed her eyes and waited for the moment of death to arrive. However, she did not feel any pain for a long time. When she opened her eyes, she found herself lying in Ling Xiao's arms. Corpse Grandma's right arm had been completely cut off. Why? Situ Hongyan was extremely confused. It's very simple. The more I don't care about you, the more she doesn't dare to use you as a shield. At the critical moment, she threw you to me in an attempt to delay my attack. Ling Xiao said faintly. Unfortunately, she seems to have forgotten that I didn't come alone. That's right. The one who cut off Corpse Grandma's right arm was Cold Plum. Old witch, you should have persevered. To be honest, I really don't want such a beautiful woman to die in your dirty hands. Unfortunately, you don't have the guts. In the end, it was all for naught. Ling Xiao revealed a sneer and said faintly, You're a cunning little beast. At this moment, Corpse Grandma almost fell into despair. However, in the next moment, an excited expression appeared on her face again. Ling Xiao knew what she was happy about, because someone had come, and it was not just one person. The aura of these people was exactly the same as the aura of Emerald Wave Island's disciples. Situ Hongyan frowned. She did not know why, But when the people of Emerald Wave Island came, she did not feel happy at all. Instead, she felt a little uneasy. Corpse Grandma was the deputy island master of Emerald Wave Island, but she killed her senior brother and even used her to threaten Ling Xiao. This made her feel very bad. However, Ling Xiao, who was clearly just an outsider, was willing to save her life. She knew that Ling Xiao would not fall in love with her. He just felt that it was a pity for her to die. It was even more of a pity to die in the hands of Corpse Grandma. But saving her was saving. At the critical moment, it was so clear who was a friend and who was an enemy. Sure enough, rumors did not represent everything. Ling Xiao was rumored to be a guy who did not recognize his own family. Ling Xiao, hurry up and leave. The one who came is the other vice island master of Emerald Ripple Island, Monk Lee. His strength is on par with Corpse Granny. You are no match for him. Go, I will handle this matter. Situ Hongyan was not Corpse Granny. At this critical moment, she still stood on Ling Xiao's side. You want to leave? It's too late. Just as the voice arrived, the person was already standing beside Corpse Granny for a moment. This person's speed was faster than the speed of sound. Not a single hair grew on his bald head. However, no one dared to laugh at him. With his powerful strength, whoever dared to laugh at him would be courting death. Looking at this person, Ling Xiao lightly sighed. Even though Jade Ripple Island was said to be on par with Divine Phoenix Empire, in reality, their strength was clearly inferior. The two Vice Island Masters weren't Yin-Yang realm experts. They couldn't compare to Divine Phoenix Empire in this aspect. A small island was a small island. The Five Immortals Island might be really powerful, but the Piping Island and Jade Wave Island of the Seven Martial Ancestor Island did not seem to be as powerful as imagined. Of course, even so, they were still in existence, second only to the two great empires. They could barely be considered on the same level. This bald person should be the other Vice Island Master of Jade Ripple Island that Situ Hongyan mentioned, Sengli. Not long after, more people arrived at the ruined temple. Among them, there were actually two Grotto Heaven realm martial artists. Although they were only at the initial stage of the Grotto Heaven realm, the Grotto Heaven realm was the Grotto Heaven realm. There was no doubt about this. Their strength was even more unquestionable. As for the rest, the weakest cultivation was at least a 7-star Heaven realm martial artist. This could be considered a group of elites of Jade Ripple Island. Compared to the people led by Corpse Granny last time, they were obviously stronger. What happened, Corpse Granny? Li looked at the corpse of the Jade Ripple Island disciple that had been sucked dry, then looked at the heavily injured Corpse Granny and asked, Do I need to say it? I found the heavily injured protector, Zhongshui, here, who knew that old thing was cunning and actually faked it. I was injured by his sneak attack and had no choice but to recuperate here. Later, Situ and this disciple came together, so I ordered them to protect me. Who knew that this little bastardling, Xiao, would come and insist on killing me? Our pitiful disciple actually had his life force sucked dry by his demonic technique and turned into a withered corpse. Corpse Granny's words. Even a slightly smarter person would not believe it. Li naturally would not believe it. However, he would definitely not expose it and would firmly stand on Corpse Granny's side. The rest of the Jade Ripple Island disciples were the same. Those who could see through it would not expose it because Corpse Granny was a member of their Jade Ripple Island. Those who could not see through it would naturally support Corpse Granny. After all, Ling Xiao was their Jade Ripple Island's enemy. At this time, they were staring at Ling Xiao with eyes full of killing intent, as if they could not wait to cut Ling Xiao into 1,000 pieces. However, in this world, there were always those who were more maverick, and these people might be hated. However, they lived according to their own hearts and did not follow what others said. For example, Situ Hongyan was like this. Ling Xiao saved her life. For an outsider to be willing to save her, this was enough to move her. She clearly knew the truth, but did not say it. She would never do such a dirty and shameless thing. Vice Island Master Singly. Corpse Granny's words cannot be believed. Although she is not the Vice Island Master, she is full of lies and is extremely shameless. Not only did she kill senior brother, she even used my life to threaten Ling Xiao. Even I find this kind of thing strange, but she is not embarrassed at all. Situ Hongyan spoke. In exchange, she was stunned. Even Ling Xiao looked at her with some surprise. In fact, at this time, she could have remained silent. However, she did not do so. Too childish, too naive. Ling Xiao shook his head, but then smiled. But I like this kind of person. A balloon full of lies. No one dared to say it out loud, and no one dared to poke it. However, Situ Hongyan did it. She pierced the balloon that was said to be the sun, which naturally caused a shock. Granny Corpse sneered and said, "Little girl, could it be that you've fallen in love with this Ling Xiao? Otherwise, why would you slander him like this? I'm the Vice Island Master of Emerald Ripple Island, your senior and master. I know you're pure and kind, but you shouldn't be so easily fooled by a few sweet words from Ling Xiao, right? You said I used you to threaten Ling Xiao? Don't you think it's ridiculous? What is your relationship with Ling Xiao? Me holding you hostage? Do you think I am an idiot?" Corpse Granny's words were righteous, as if she was really a pure white lotus. Even Sang Li was a little disgusted. After all, Sang Li understood Corpse Granny's character. However, at this moment, even though he knew this, he still could not refute Corpse Granny. Instead, he coldly looked at Situ Hongyan and said, "This is nonsense. The dignified rose sword of Emerald Wave Island wants to stand on the opposite side of Emerald Wave Island and speak for a villain. Have all the teachings of the sect been eaten by dogs?